Okay, Mr. Mayor, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will call the meeting to order. I hope council members are all feeling better soon. I'll start off with reading our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anias-Shinnebec, the people of the Three Fires known as the Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi Nation, who have inhabited this land from time immemorial, and further give thanks to Chippewa Saugeen, the Chippewa Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and Inuit whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Approval of the agenda. The recommendation is that the agenda be approved as presented. Someone to move it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Show of hands, all in favor of the motion? The motion is carried. Declaration of pecuniary interest. You declare it fit during the meeting. We're down now to our budget presentation. I would like to turn it forward to Madam CEO to make a few comments first.
Good morning, Mayor Burley and members of council, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Staff is pleased to be here with you today. You have members of the senior leadership team and myself here today to present the proposed 2022 budget. And I thank you for the opportunity just to allow me to give a brief overview and just my perception of the process to get here. So as you know, I came on board early January, and as part of my getting up to speed on the township services and working with our staff, I had a number of meetings with the business areas and asked a lot of questions about our services, our resources, and our budgets. So I've met with each one of the business line areas and had them walk me through our services, associated resources, and our budgets. I will give tremendous kudos to our treasurer for then leading us through, this group through, a very comprehensive process to develop the budget that is before you today. It was a very collaborative process. This senior leadership team met. I was very impressed at the willingness to work together. We did a line-by-line review of the budget, asked a lot of questions, challenged a few things, and what we're here to present to you today is what I believe is a fair and reasonable budget, and it is based on needs and must-dos. And so thank you, Mayor Burley, for indulging me with a couple of minutes to give you my impression of the budget process. I was very impressed with our team and their willingness to work together. And with that, I'll turn it back to you and Ms. Buchanan to walk us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. And before I turn it over to our Madam Treasurer, I would just like to say, if it's okay with council, we'd like the treasurer go through the book line by line, and I'd like her to go through each individual section first, do a section, and then we'll turn it over to council if they have any questions on that particular section. Go through the whole budget in that format, and then at the very end, if any council member has any question anywhere in the budget, then we'd entertain those kind of questions. So if that's okay with you, Madam Treasurer, I'd like to turn it over to you and welcome.
Yes, that is okay with me. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today we are here to discuss our draft 2022 operating and capital budget. I will be sharing my screen, so I apologize if I do not see questions, but I will be stopping throughout the presentation after each department. So please ask your questions as you wish. So just bear with me for one moment, please. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So just to start, we are going to present how we kind of got here today and what some of our next steps will be. So in September of 2021, our budget survey went live to the public, seeking their input. That survey then closed in November, where department heads then started in December drafting preliminary budgets. When we first compiled everyone's operating and capital asks, we were looking at a 16.5% levy increase over prior year, which staff worked very hard throughout the month of January to decrease that to what is being presented to you today. In March, we will present any changes that are requested by Council and report them back to have our final bylaw passed, hopefully in April of this year. Just before we move into our 2022 budget, I wanted to take a look back at 2021 and our tax rate. So our residential tax rate was 0.00570642. And we had, with that tax rate, it provided us with a tax levy revenue of $10,525,354. And when we combined it with the county and education tax rate, our overall residential tax rate was 1.095332%. When we compare that residential combined tax rate to some of our neighboring municipalities, we find that Georgian Bluffs has the lowest tax rate. So now looking at assessment growth. Growth, whether it is positive or negative, occurs when there is a change to a property. For example, a new single-family dwelling or a demolition. Growth allows the township to spread our overall tax levy over a wider tax basis. If we were to collect $1 million from 6,000 homes, that cost per home would be more than if we were to collect $1 million from 6,500 homes. At this time, we are not looking for a reassessment year until at least 2024. So what that means, typically every 4 years, MPAC, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, reassesses every property within Ontario. That was to occur in 2020. However, due to COVID, it did not. So we are now looking at it to occur in 2024. So when we look at 2022, this is a breakdown of our assessment for the whole township by their tax class. So as you can see, 79% of our tax class is assessed as residential, with the next highest being farmland at 11%. So just a brief lesson, I guess, on how a municipal tax rate is determined. There are two components that the township has no control over. The first one being assessment, which is determined by MPAC, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, and they set the assessed value for every property within Ontario. The second is the tax ratio, which is set by the upper tier county. A tax ratio, in most general terms, is a way of expressing assessment as though it was residential. And when you take the assessment times the tax ratio, that gives you what is called a weighted assessment. What the aspect that council and staff do have control over are our operating expenses, our capital expenses, and our revenues, which that gives us our taxes to be levied. Once we have that amount, we take the taxes to be levied, divided by the total weighted assessment, and that provides us with the residential municipal tax rate. Then, using those tax ratios set by the county, we're able to take that residential tax rate and make it to be the commercial, farmland, industrial, etc. tax rates.
Thank you, Sam, for your opening statements. Just wondered, does council have any questions on this first little portion? And if you do, just speak up, please.
I have a question about the impact assessment. Have they said that they are going to defer that until 2024, or would they consider or think of bringing that in sooner?
So they have stated that it will not change for 2022 or 2023. So our best interpretation means that they are looking at 2024 to have it changed.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Colburn.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. Just to verify, Samantha, if I may, the chart that shows the neighboring municipalities comparison doesn't have a date on it, so I'm assuming this refers to 2021?
That is correct. Those were all 2021 combined tax rates.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions of council? I do not see anything, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Okay. So now we are going to jump into our 2022 operating and capital budgets. So I wanted to start by showing council the balance of our loans. So we have now 3 loans, being the Brook Storm Drain, the Biodigester, the Y Recreation Center. And in that order, the Brook Storm Drain, we are looking at it being paid off in full in 47 months. Biodigester will be paid off in full in 48 months, and the Y Recreation Center in 72 months. The airport loan has been fully paid off as per council's direction in January. Are there any questions on our loans?
I have a question. I'm wondering, is there any advantage to using those funds from the airport to pay off all of those loans, or are we better keeping those?
Can I address that question later on? There is a large capital project that staff were proposing on using those airport funds to contribute and pay for.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Please go ahead. Oh, Councillor Barfa, go ahead. You're muted, Carol.
Good morning, Sam. Just a quick question. I understood that the funds from the airport were put in a reserve fund for operations and what else? Capital and operations?
Council approved to have them moved into our working capital fund reserve.
Okay, so it couldn't be used for anything else, such as paying off these debts.
It could be, however, there is a large capital project that we will be discussing later on in the presentation that staff were proposing to use those funds. We do not have to. That was just staff's proposal.
Okay, that was why I asked the question, where the funds were going to settle. Thank you.
I see no other questions. Sam, please go ahead.
So next we have a breakdown by department of the 2022 budgeted salaries and benefits. While preparing these amounts, staff took into council's approval to move to the 60th percentile from the 50th, reflected council's approval to hire additional public works staff. Staff have also taken into account any cost of living adjustments as per council remuneration policy and our union agreement, and any step increases of staffs. The only new positions included within these is a communications specialist in the administration line, the 5 new public works, which are included in the roads line, and seasonal bylaw enforcement assistance, which is included in the buildings line. Are there any questions in regards to this?
Any questions from council?
Mr. Mayor, I note that Councillor Coburn has her hand raised.
Oh, okay, please go ahead, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, if I may. I wonder if it might be helpful to get our treasurer to define specifically what administration means in this budget area compared to operations administration. Those are listed separately, and I just think it would be helpful for everyone to have a similar understanding of what is meant by those two. And then I have another question following this. Thank you.
Please go ahead, Sam.
Okay, so the operations administration is specifically for those staff who are within our operations department. For example, our director, the assistant for that department, and the road supervisors. When we are speaking about the administration department specifically, that is for administration within our township admin building. I apologize, that's a lot of admin. And so we're looking at kind of our CAO, Director of Corporate Services, and HR and those staff.
Thank you. And then I do have a question. Sorry, I see Councillor Barfoot's hand up. Mayor Burley, shall I go ahead with my second question, or do you want to come back to it?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. As this particular slide references COLA, I do have some questions about COLA, Samantha, if I may. I see two different figures for COLA, one for Council proposing a 2.2 increase. Just wondering why that would be higher than than our staff, both unionized and non-unionized. And then I'm wondering, I know that we have, I think, a bylaw or at least a policy that addresses how we look at COLA, and I believe it's looking at the monthly cost of living adjustment for November, is it, of the previous year, or October? Was the COLA for that particular month per that policy 2.0 exactly? Was it 2.2? What was the actual COLA figure for the month that we are to be looking at?
Sam, can you answer that?
Yes, so the reason Council's COLA is 2.2 is because that is what is included in the 2018 Council Remuneration Policy. And the 2% for union staff is what was included in their union agreement. When we looked at the all goods CPI for the 12 months ending October of 2020, which is what our non-union policy alludes to what we are to use, it actually came in at 4.7%, which staff felt was extremely high when compared to neighboring municipalities. They all kind of ranged from the 1.5 to the 2.5 or 3. So that is why staff chose a 2% for non-union.
Thank you, Sam. You said October 2020. Did you mean October 2021?
Yes, I did. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Okay, if you're, is that all your questions for now, Councillor Coburn?
She's nodding yes, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sir. Okay. Councillor Barfoot, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sam, you mentioned a position, communications. Okay, that's yet to, there is no one filling that position at this present time. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Madam CEO, please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Burley. We were waiting for budget to finish our budget, but I think I had indicated in a January email update to Council that we are finalizing that posting for a communications specialist, and that will be posted very shortly. We haven't included it in our org chart at this point because the position is not filled, but that was an approved position last year by Council. Thanks very much.
Okay. Councillor Barfoot, did that answer your question?
Well, sort of.
Okay. Councillor Colburn, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with Councillor Barfoot, sort of. I wonder, Sam and our CAO, if we will be coming back to that position, that communications PR specialist. I could be wrong, but I do not believe that position was approved by council. And I would just note that there are some on council, myself included, who will not be approving an additional staff position in communications and PR for this budget. So do we want to discuss that later, or is now the time to talk about that?
Madam CEO, comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would invite Ms. Drury to comment whether that position, it is in council's strategic plan that a communication position be hired. And I was not here, but I understood that the position was approved as part of the report related to the organizational review that was presented to council. But I would defer to other staff to confirm that for me.
Any comments, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, CEO Fletcher. CEO Fletcher is correct. It was, this position was approved in 2020 through our strategic plan, and also touched upon in the organization and compensation review completed in 2021. I guess just speaking from a staffing perspective, noting that communications currently falls under the portfolio of the clerk's department. I would argue that we do see a large benefit in welcoming a communication specialist, especially given some of the feedback we've seen in our budget surveys regarding reaching out to the public in new and creative ways to communicate the services that are available. And not only that, when recognizing we are moving into an election year, communications is a high priority for this township and something that I think we can be growing upon.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now I see Madam CEO's hand up and Councillor Colburn, so maybe I'll go to the CEO first.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I would concur with Ms. Drury. And we heard very clearly from council recently at a meeting that you are looking for communication and customer service to be improved. That would be part of this portfolio, is looking at a communication and customer service strategy. So if we want to improve those areas, we need the resourcing around it. Having it off the side of people's desks right now doesn't seem to be satisfying what council would like as a service level. Thank you very much. But I would just reinforce that this position was previously approved.
Thank you, Madam CEO, and I tend to agree. I do remember those conversations that we did have. Before I go to Councillor Colburn, welcome Councillor Thompson. And just so you're aware, we're going to go through the budget section at a time. If you have any questions at all, just please put your hand up or speak up.
Thank you. Sorry for my lateness.
Now, Councillor Colburn, please go ahead.
Yeah, just a follow-up comment regarding this new position. I take issue with looking at everything on the org review report that was provided to us and automatically saying whatever was in that report is going to be approved. My understanding was that we approved the report but in principle, but that we would be looking at approving any additional newly created positions as a council and discussing those before we went ahead with them. And I'm just going to say now, and I'll probably say it again later, given the substantial increase that we're asking our ratepayers to pay with this budget, I don't know that I can approve one that considers hiring a budget that considers hiring yet another office staff person. Yes, we want communications to be better. And yes, we've talked about that as a council. I can only speak for myself, but I think what I perceived that discussion to be about was improving communications with the staff that we currently have. I'm all for hiring more frontline staff, the ones that deliver the services directly. I'm a little hesitant to hire another non-unionized individual to sit in an office, especially with the tax increase that we are proposing here. I imagine we'll come back to this later, so I'll just leave it at that for now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coburn. And yes, we will have discussions on further on in the budget. Does any other council member have any questions? Councillor Pringle, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There, yeah, just a question for our treasurer there on. I know we're talking about a 16.5% increase in tax levy here and stuff. What percentage of that percent is from this going from 50 to the 60 percentile? What chunk of that is that 16%? How much of that?
So sorry, just to clarify, that 16% is what we originally had. That is not what we are presenting here today. What we are presenting here today is a 3.2%. Just I wanted to show council that staff had worked to decrease that 16 that we originally had to be this 3.2.
I appreciate the clarification. But again, so just to clarify that, so if you can break that down then from the 3.2 that you're talking, how much of this, of the going from the 50 to the 60 percentile, how much of that takes up that 3.2%?
Unfortunately, I do not have those numbers in front of me at this moment.
Okay, it's okay. Thanks, Sam.
Mr. Mayor, you are muted.
I don't know how that happened, but okay. See no other questions, and we will definitely come back to these issues later. Madam Treasurer, I'll let you proceed.
So next up, we have our 2022 budgeted contracted services. So for the OPP, we are still in a 4-year agreement that expires in December of 2024. For Wyerton Fire, we are still in a 5-year agreement, which expires in June of 2026. For our garbage and recycling collection, we are in the middle of a 5-year agreement, which will be expiring in September of 2025. For our animal control, it was just expired and we had renegotiated that it will now expire in December of 2025. Our cemetery care, we are in a 4-year agreement, which expires in October of 2023. The Cobble Sewage is a little different, where we will collect the revenue from those who are connected to Cobble Sewage, and then we remit those funds back to Cobble Beach. This is not at an expense of our taxpayers. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Sam. On that, on the Cobble Beach sewage, it's sort of like an in and out thing's what it is. But if we do take over that plant in 2022, that would all change?
Yes, when we take over it, all the revenue collected would be kept by the township, and those revenue user fees would be used to pay for any expenses as part of the Cobble Sewage. Cobble or sewage is similar to water, where it must be kind of self-funded.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions on this particular item? Hearing none or seeing none, please go ahead, Sam.
Next, staff just wanted to give council a update on our insurance. Unfortunately, our insurance rates will be increasing by 14.2% over that of prior year. Georgian Bluffs is very fortunate that we do not have many open insurance claims. However, there are other municipalities that do, which are affecting our rates. I believe it was 5 members of senior management did meet with our insurance provider to discuss what the driving factor was for this increase. And it is just, unfortunately, the municipal industry in general.
Sam, before we go ahead, just a comment. Staff as a whole and all department heads, we do have conversations with our insurance adjusters and our insurance companies most generally during the year, all the time, how we can improve what we're doing and so on. Do we not?
Yes, we do have those ongoing discussions throughout the year. And then before budget presentation, I believe it was 5 members of senior management met with 3 members of our insurance team. And they said, unfortunately, it's nothing specific that Georgian Bluffs is doing or not doing that is driving up the premiums. It's the industry as a general, being the municipal industry.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor, I'll go to Madam CEO first and then I'll go to you. Please go ahead, Cynthia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to reinforce what Ms. Buchanan has said. We really pressed the insurance company as to whether there was anything that we could provide additionally or further. And honestly, they said they're really impressed with the way Georgian Bluffs is dealing with their insurance, any claims that we have, and actually very proactive in having the insurance company come out and review things in advance. So yeah, unfortunately, we're probably the poster child for dealing with our insurance company, but we're really impacted by other municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. I can remember a time where we were having problems keeping the wheels on our plows on the ground, but we've overcome that now. Deputy Mayor Carlson, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a question for Ms. Buchanan about the tax amount. Just curious, what is 1% of our tax at this point? That would help me kind of put in perspective what some of these increases are. Thank you.
Sam, please go ahead.
Sorry, just to clarify, are you looking for kind of what 1% increase over 2021 would be?
No, what's 1% of our total tax that we and I guess it would need to be 2021 because we haven't set 2022 yet. Unless we're doing 1% as a proposed rate.
So our 2021 municipal tax levy was $10,525,354. So 1% of that would be $105,253.54.
Okay, thank you. I just know that when we're dealing at the county, that's one of the rates that they give us, just helps keep any increases in a perspective. Thank you.
Okay. No, I will make note of that for going forward.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. Seeing no other questions, please go ahead, Sam.
So next up, we have our 2022 local boards budget. For the Township Fire Department, they are proposing a budget increase of $26,775. This is comprised of a 6.2% operating increase and a 0% capital increase. For the biodigester, that budget has not been presented yet, so staff are proposing a nil or a 0 increase over that of 2021. The airport is no longer, so all of those funds will be saved in our 2022 budget. We have our library with a slight increase, Grey Cobble Conservation with a slight increase. In Katie Arena, unfortunately, we do not have better information to help our 2022 budget at this time, so we are proposing no increase for that. Are there any questions?
Madam Treasurer, on the ITFD budget, that's mainly call related, is it not?
This is Georgian Bluff's portion of operating, being calls and our ongoing monthly contributions and the capital.
So it includes everything, is what you're saying?
Yes, it includes everything.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Carlson, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just a question about the bio then. Do we actually have an established approved budget by the bio board there? Or we're just going on past expenses?
For 2022, we do not have an approved budget yet, as we're waiting until a bit more information comes in related to the bylaw.
Does council have any other comments or questions? Seeing none, please go ahead, Sam.
So next, we just wanted to provide council with a visual of how our operating expenses are through each service. So we have 34% of our operating expenses are related to public works. That is our roads department. 24% is for general administration. And the next highest is not 9% for our recreation and facilities. Are there any questions?
Does council have any questions? I do not see any, Madam Treasurer. Please go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I may interrupt, Councillor Coburn has her hand raised.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize. I have, I'm not quick enough to get my little virtual hand raised there for you to see. Just a question through you, if I may, to our treasurer. The 24% that we see on that graph that's attributed to general administration, would you say that that's a typical percentage across municipalities? Or do you think that's out of line at all? When I look at 24% for general administration, and I'm not entirely sure if I even know exactly what that means, but I think I do. And then I look at something like recreation and facilities at only 9%. Is the balance something that we need to be concerned about, do you think?
Madam Treasurer?
So just to provide a bit more information on what the general administration title or includes, that is your council budget, that is your administration and your treasury budget. And typically my experience with other municipalities is that percentage can range from anywhere to 20 to 35%.
Does that clarify, Councillor Coburn?
And Councillor Coburn is nodding her
Yes,
head, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay, sorry, I can't see. I have to apologize. I can only see hands or very few of you, so don't be afraid to speak up or yell at me. If there's no other questions, then please, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Okay. So now we are going to transition into individual departments, their operating and capital S. So first we have our council 2022 budget. As mentioned before, we have included a 2.2% salaries and benefit increase as per the 2018 council remuneration policy. There will be a new remuneration policy that will be enacted December 1st of 2022 with the new term of council. The donations, a policy will be presented at a March Committee of the Whole meeting just to provide more information on that and bring back the township donation policy for council's consideration. Mileage between 2021 budget and 2021 actual is much lower. That is because of COVID. We have slightly increased it in the 2022 budget in hopes that people can start to attend actual conferences in person, and we have increased it to allow for those who are part of our citizen boards their mileage for any events as well. Are there any questions?
Madam Treasurer, on this training conferences and so on, that part of the budget, that's just a guesstimate on your part because of COVID, we're not sure what's going to happen here in the remainder of 2022?
That is correct. And again, we have increased that training conferences and conventions for our public citizens who are members of our citizen boards as council approved for them to attend.
So if we change that, if we need to update that because of COVID restrictions being lifted, the more conferences are in person. I can think of at least 3 that will be in person. Where do we get those funds from?
Are you referring to if they end up being in excess of the 26,000?
Yes.
I would hope that we do see other savings throughout our budget, but it does, council, it flows into our overall township surplus.
Oh, okay. All right. Makes sense. Councillor Coburn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to our treasurer. In looking at this chart at council salaries and benefits, and I'm sure you'll have a logical explanation for this, but if in fact we're looking at a 2.2% increase, when I do the calculation for that proposed increase, I get 1.6%. So what's accounting for the difference there? Am I missing something in on the benefit side that would offset that? Yeah.
Yes, so it is in the benefit side. Salaries has increased, but our contribution rates for CPP, EI, WSMB, they did not increase by that 2.2. Most of them were less than 1% increase, which is what is offsetting that overall.
Thank you. That explains that. Maybe a discussion for down the road, but I'm not quite sure why we're proposing a 2.2% cost of living increase for council, yet we're only offering staff at 2.0. So I wonder if that warrants some further discussion as well. I know it's part of our remuneration policy. For some reason, that's just not sitting right with me. Just a comment.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Carlton, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm somewhat on the same wavelength as Councillor Coburn there. I know that 2.2 comes about because of our remuneration policy from 2018. I think it is something that maybe council wants to look at and say, do we drop ours to 2% to match all of staff? I would be willing to do that. I feel a little strange getting 2.2 when everybody else is only getting 2. So just a thought maybe first all to think about. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Deputy Mayor Carlton, but the whole idea of the enumeration committee was to review council's salary before the next term of council, and that was done, and that's what the enumeration committee come up with. So I don't know if I really feel comfortable changing that during that term. Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
So just in relation to that discussion, the 2.2 comes from the 2018 council remuneration policy. The 2020 council remuneration policy that will be coming into effect in December, it does follow that of the non-union policy. So it is going to be based off of the CPI for the 12 months ending October of the year before. So that change has been adopted. Just when we're looking at majority of 2022, 11 of those 12 months fall under the previous council remuneration committee, which is why we've included a 2.2. But come 2023, that will be following the same policy as our non-union staff.
Thank you, Sam. I seen a lot of hands went down when you clarified that. That's good.
Are there any other questions related to council's operating expenses?
Welcome, Councillor Thompson or Councillor Sullivan. We are going through the budget one section at a time. If you have any questions, please just speak up. Excuse me. Is there any other questions of council? See none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
So next we have our 2022 administration operating budget. We had previously discussed the salaries and benefits increase. You will also see an increase for elections. That is because we are going into election year. So of the proposed $80,000 included in the 2022 budget, 20,000 of it will be funded from the current year levy, with the remaining funds to be pulled from the elections reserve that we do have set up. You will also see an increase in the computer lines. This is kind of, we're going based off of what we've actually been incurring from Infinity for our computer services. Are there any questions?
Councillor Coburn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to, I guess, the rest of council and senior staff. I think the white elephant on this page is the increase that's being proposed for salaries and benefits for our administration. When you look at the percentage of increase on that budget line over last year's actual, it's almost an 80% increase. That concerns me. I know that we have based a lot of these calculations on what the organizational and salary review told us. I think when I provided words of caution back then, when we received that report, we're seeing the impact of that now. Mr. Mayor, I really feel like council needs to take that report, the Pesce report, off the shelf, dust it off, have a meeting, try to understand those recommendations better, and go through them line by line. Because in approving that whole report, kit and caboodle, it somewhat feels like we have handed over the keys to the kingdom. And I think, if I may be so bold, that we're seeing that in this near 80% increase in the administration salaries and benefits. That report that was provided to us by Pesce indicated that the estimated changes would result in 2022 about 59 or $60,000 increase, and that would represent a 0.43% tax increase. So I guess I'm asking our treasurer, does that near 80% increase for this particular budget area, that budget line for salaries and benefits, how does that line up with the report that told us that the proposed tax increase impact for that budget category would be around 0.43%?
Thank you, Councillor Cobble. I'm going to let Madam CAO respond first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to all of council. I think we have to be very, very careful in comparing the actual for 2021 to the proposed budget for 2022. In essence, folks, the township should have spent $783,000 last year on compensation for the service levels that are expected. The fact that the township didn't, to almost a third of that budget, is something that sent up a red flag for me. That means that 30% of the budget, almost 30% of the budget, was left unspent due to vacancies, due to turnover, and due to turmoil in the township. And that's not sustainable moving forward. So I would caution council at any notion that that's an 80% increase. I think Ms. Buchanan has explained the difference between the 783 2021 budget and what is proposed for 2022. But I would really, really caution, we had a number of positions that sat vacant last year, multiple recruiting processes trying to fill them, and that is not sustainable moving forward, folks. So that's my caution at comparing those two numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. I'm going to go to Councillor Thompson next. Brian, please go ahead.
Hi. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So my comments, I think, are same as Councillor Coburn, but a bit different. I can appreciate what you're saying, Madam CAO, and I think I've been thinking about this all weekend since I looked over the budget. I think we're at a bit of a stuck place, because I agree. We talk about organizational structure. We talk about the service we want to provide. We consider reviews that are done by external contractors, and then it comes to a decision. I think where we are today is it hits different when you're looking at it in terms of a budget and the tax increase. So we can agree all along about the things that we like, and then get stuck when we see the price tag. And I think of it a little bit like a car. When I have an idea that I'm going to buy a car, and I think it's going to be about 30,000, and then when I realize, oh, at the end this is actually 45. What happened here? How did we, and by the time you look at the sunroof and everything else, it got out of hand on you. So I feel like that and I don't want us to get stuck and not be able to move forward, but I also don't want us to say, well, when we had a conversation about our services 3 months ago, we thought this was a good idea, so it must be a good idea. Like, I think we've got to find a way, table this conversation, or table this conversation and move on, or come up with something rather than sort of get stuck the weeds of, is it 20%? Is it 80%? Is it, we said we would do it in November, so do we still do it now? Like, I want to see us sort of have a productive conversation, because I agree with both positions that I think we're looking at, the numbers are a bit scary now that we consider what we've talked about.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. I think I understood. You kept cutting out a bit, but I think I understand what you're saying. Councillor Coburn, your hand is up. Please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you to our treasurer, I just want to make sure that I have all of my facts straight for this, again, going back to the salaries and benefits for this budget area. So am I correct in understanding that this increase includes the following? So based on the salary review that was done a year or so ago, non-unionized staff pay grades were bumped up. We asked, or the report recommended, that we hit the market value at the 60th percentile as opposed to what I would consider a typical 50th percentile. And so those adjustments were made. I also note that there was a 1.9% adjustment made on those salaries per that report. And we're recommending an additional 2% COLA increase for those same positions. I just need some clarification that my thinking is correct on all of those points. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Madam Treasurer, are you able to respond?
Yes. So the 1.9% that you are referring to, that was the 2021 cost of living. So it was 1.9% over that of 2020. Does that answer your question?
Thank you, Sam. It answers part of it. So I guess what you're saying is all of those bump ups, the pay grade, the salary grids that were bumped up to the 60th percentile, did that impact all of our non-unionized administrative staff, or only some of those that were found to be well below the market value? And I mention this because before I came on council, there was a similar salary review done by Warden Updegrove. And I believe that came out in 2018. So only 3 years prior to us performing another salary review. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Again, that Warden Updegrove predates my time on council. That report indicated that we were only 3% below market value for these positions and salaries. When we got the Pesci report that took a whole different set of comparators, different comparative municipalities into account that included the counties and some larger centers, like I think Collingwood, if I'm not mistaken, and Town of Blue Mountains. They found in some cases that we were 8%, 10%, 14%, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, below market value. So I struggle to understand how we could have gone from only 3% below market value in these staffing levels to such a high differential. And the only thing, in my humble opinion, that I can come up with that explains that difference is the use of the comparators that skewed all of the averages for the salaries. So I know I've said it before. I apologize if I'm sounding like a broken record, but this does concern me. This increase does concern me and will continue to concern me. So I echo Councillor Thompson's remark that I don't want to get stuck, but I also want us to be logical and accountable to the ratepayers. We're already asking many of them to pay more because of the new water billing rates. And now we're asking them to pay a 3.2% increase in taxes. And I'm not sure what more value they're getting for their money. Sorry, I'm going on and on. Sam, I should let you address my comments, please.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Before I go to, I have a number of hands here, but before I go to Madam CEO first, is this a topic that we as a council need to go through a budget the way it's being presented today, and then maybe have a further conversation on this particular item before we actually make the final decision on our budget? It's just a suggestion. Madam CEO, please go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to Councillor Coburn's comments, I would agree wholeheartedly that things need to be logical. There needs to be a true framework. It needs to be fair and equitable. So I do agree with you 100%. I would like to invite either Ms. Drury or Ms. Buchanan just to clarify the 2018 review that Councillor Coburn has referenced. I understood that to be related to pay equity. So the reason for doing that review was to ensure that we were compliant with pay equity. So that was a requirement. So I'm sensing that there's a feeling that there was duplication of work, but my understanding is one was related to pay equity, and then there was another one that was related more to compensation comparators. And then, Mr. Mayor, I think I will address your question following that answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I see your head was shaking up and down. Any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and just to confirm, following CEO Fletcher's comments, that is correct. The 2018 study was a pay equity study.
Okay, thank you. Madam CEO, you want to make another comment on my comment, I guess?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I think we've outlined what the increases from the 2021 budget to the 2022 budget are related to. They're related to existing positions. They're related to, I guess, previous decisions of council. So I'm not sure where to take this discussion other than, and there's one additional position that that is included in these numbers. I mean, if you want to take it offline, I guess, Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure what you're suggesting in terms of taking this as a separate discussion. This is really part of the budget, is your investment and compensation of staff. I would say in other municipalities, there are many that are looking at whether they're paying at the 50th, 60th percentile, because there is such a competition out there for talented staff in terms of retention and attraction. So I don't think we're offside with that that decision to pay at the 60th percentile. I think that just makes us really competitive in the market out there. But I believe staff updated me that there were 9 positions last year that were vacant, and only one of them was filled for the entire year last year. So I'm just giving council that for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. All I was suggesting, Madam CEO and Council, was that this seems to be a very, very important topic, and just want to make sure that all of Council understands why we're in this position we're in right now. And Madam CEO, you have tried to explain that in very good detail, which was good. But I just wondered if we needed to have a separate conversation about this one particular item holding up our budget process at this time. That's all I was trying to say.
Yep. Well, fair enough.
Council Coburn, I believe you see your hand.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. In response to the question about the Warden Updegrove report, folks, I don't know what I'm looking at here, but it says it's the Warden Updegrove report from June of 2018 when that was introduced. And it clearly says the purpose was to address all 3 pay equities: internal, external, which is what I'm talking about with the market value check, and the Ontario statutory, which would be the pay equity portion. So what am I looking at here that tells me something entirely different than what's just been described to me as a pay equity exercise only? I've been through those kinds of exercises in previous places of employment. I can read this report. It clearly tells me it was covering all of those aspects, not just pay equity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Coburn. Any comments from staff? Seeing none. Any other questions from council on this particular piece of the budget at this time? I can't see any, so are we, Madam Treasurer, going to proceed?
Okay. So I'm actually going to.
Sorry, Madam Treasurer, before I apologize for interrupting you, but I'm just wondering, the council let me know when you would like to have a break, and we would do that. So I'm just putting that out there. Okay, go ahead, Madam Treasurer.
Okay. So I'm actually going to turn the presentation over to Britt here for a bit, and she will discuss her capital asks of council.
Madam Clerk, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, everyone. So to move on to the arguably most exciting part of the budget, the corporate services / clerks section of the budget. So our first slide that you see in front of you here is in relation to our ongoing records management program, which, as this council is aware, has become a sole focus of the clerks department. Specifically that of electronic records management, something that has been relatively unaddressed, I guess I should say, since amalgamation. So now we find ourselves with mountains, almost literally, of hard copy documents that require conversion to electronic format to match with our file hold system. So to assist us with this, we have applied for a grant through the Canada Summer Jobs Program to onboard a summer student or a type of kind of contracted summer student position to assist us in scanning all of our hard copy documents and creating their electronic counterparts. So we've included a budget of $10,000 to this effect. The grant that I've described, being that of Canada Summer Jobs, will likely cover 50% of those costs. So therefore the budgeted amount should only be $5,000. Is there any questions on this specific ask?
Does council have any questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please go ahead.
Okay, Sam, can we move to the next slide? Perfect. Thank you. You're way ahead of me. So as part of our ongoing modernization approach, and we all saw out of COVID the importance of investing in our IT structure and our infrastructure, I have included a request to install fiber internet at the Township Administration Office. Now, again, as part of our IT modernization, we've been introducing new softwares to increase efficiency. And currently, the services that we have at the Township Admin Office just plainly are not meeting the demand that we are now placing on them. And we have all seen examples of this, specifically throughout virtual meetings. When we experience inclement weather at the office, all services go down, which is something that fiber will help us avoid, as it is essentially hardwired in. So this project, I have budgeted $100,000. That is quite conservative. I don't anticipate spending quite that much, but I want to include the conservative amount just to ensure that we are able to attain the services that we need, to ensure that we're not only providing the services to council, but to the public as well, especially given now that we have a VoIP phone system that is reliant upon the internet. If we lose service to internet, we lose service to both council and the public. Is there any questions on this ask?
Madam Clerk, I have a question. Does that include internet security too? Upgrades to our server and so on, so we don't have to worry about cyber attacks?
No. So while fiber will assist us in that regard, it is not the pillar. That would be our next slide, which is the server upgrade.
Oh, sorry. Does council have any questions? Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
I was just going to say, is there any questions regarding fiber? But you beat me to it.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment, is that something, like, are we proposing to add that on to this year's budget? Or is it something that could be, do we have any modernization funds, I guess, left from that grant that we got that could be utilized for that? So I'm looking at 100,000 and thinking that's basically 1% of the budget.
Dan?
Madam Treasurer, you want to answer that?
Yes. So of the $100,000, staff are proposing that it is funded $30,000 from the current year taxation levy, with the remaining $70,000 from the IT reserve. Unfortunately, our modernization funds have all been kind of pre-allocated, that I can't guarantee there would be sufficient funds left once we complete those projects.
Okay. See no other questions, Madam Clerk, please go ahead.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, further to your comments, the server upgrades, I would say, is arguably the most important ask out of the ask that you see coming from the corporate services / clerks department. Now, the server upgrade is a scheduled upgrade, one that we see per the replacement structure under our IT servicing program. So this is an ask that, again, is scheduled and arguably, again, most important because we see more demand on our IT services, which then translates to more demand for increased security services. And that's where this server will help protect the township. It will boost up our IT security and ensure that we are doing everything that we can to avoid a ransomware attack.
Thank you. That answered my question. Before I go to council, with these server upgrades, I realize we're talking wires and stuff like that. Do we need to make any upgrades to our, I'll refer to it as our server closet, to accommodate any upgrades?
No.
No. Okay. Does council have any questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please go ahead.
Okay, so one of my last slides, something I'm very, very excited about and something that staff are excited about, and I know council will be super excited about, is our public customer service portal. So In 2020, we applied for a grant through the Municipal Modernization Program, through the third intake of that program, to implement an online customer service portal, which will integrate township services to one easily accessible portal via the township's website. So the total budget for the program, as you'll note, is proposed to be $107,000. Now, the grant that I just mentioned will cover approximately $70,000 of this project, with the remaining $37,000 to be funded by the township. So while it looks daunting, it is not as daunting as it may appear, simply because we have been successful in that grant program. So the portal, as I said, will allow township residents to access services online, including water bills, tax bills, integrating all of the information from Keystone into an account-based program. And I would encourage council to seek out an example of this and kind of the pillar of what we're looking to achieve, which is that of the virtual town hall available through the town of Collingwood. So I would encourage you to look that resource up to envision our vision of this project. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, if there's any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, please go ahead. Brian, are you there?
Sorry, mine is about a process. Yep. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
So some of you can't. I don't know. So here's my question. I know for process we like to have our cameras on. I'm a bit worried that I'm at 10:14, so an hour and 15 minutes, and I've burned through 30% of my iPad. Are we able to put cameras off, or is that a procedural no-no? My question is just to save some battery, and maybe it'll help my voice even. So,
Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Yes, Councillor Thompson, please feel free to disable your video. Okay, are there any questions regarding this customer service portal ask? I will note that while the details are kind of high level right now, we are working with program administrators to have more details presented to council in upcoming months to detail timelines and overview the project as a whole.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Carlton, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize to our clerk. You mentioned a grant, and I'm thinking you were cutting out when you were mentioning that grant, so I missed that. So do you mind giving a little update on that again? My apologies.
No problem at all. So just to repeat, in 2021, as the clerk, I applied for a grant through the Municipal Modernization Program, the third intake of that program, to which our application was successful. And specifically, I'll note that the application was specific to this project that you see in front of you, being implementation of a customer service portal. Now, we were successful to the tune of approximately $70,000. It's about 69 and change. So the township will only be expected to cover the remaining balance, which is approximately $37,000.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for that. Is there any other questions of council? And if you have a question, feel free to just speak up if you need to. And I see no other questions, Madam Clerk. So is Sam going back to Sam, or yes? Sam, please go ahead. Yes. Madam Treasurer.
So Finance normally doesn't get to ask of capital asks of council, so I am very excited to ask for this. Staff are asking for council's approval to lease a new stuffer and postage machine. I'm not sure if any members of council know what I'm speaking of here, but our stuffer machine is what we use when we print tax bills and water bills, and it will fold and place into envelopes all of those distributions. Our postage machine then will put the required postage on to send out those letters. So we are looking to lease these 2 new machines, which have been included in our equipment leasing of the administration operating budget. Previously, we had bought the postage machine in 2006, and our previous stuffer was bought in 2012. Both pieces of equipment are extremely helpful, not only to finance, but to other departments. Are there any questions?
Madam Treasurer, I kept hearing about the stuffing machine for years, so I decided to go and investigate it one time when you're doing your taxes. And I got to admit, I was totally amazed of what this machine can do and what it was doing and how it was really putting out the tax bill so quick, all one process. So it's quite a stuffing machine, I gotta admit. I was quite impressed. Does council have any questions on the stuffing machine? I see none. Please go ahead, Madam Treasurer.
So next we have our cemetery's operating budget. There are not many changes here. Most of the proposed budget increases are driven from our insurance increases. Are there any questions?
I have one question, Madam Treasurer. Jackman Cemetery, I do not know where that is. Does anyone know where that is? I believe Brittany, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know if I could necessarily describe to you where it is, given I'm not overly familiar with that portion of our township, but it is in the former township of Derby. And it is an inactive cemetery. So it's essentially a heritage cemetery that we only maintain. There are no active burials in that cemetery.
Okay, all right, I think I know where it is. Thank you very much for that.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's out by the Sydenham Sportsman Club.
Yeah.
That little one out there.
Yeah, okay. Yep, now I know. Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions on this particular item? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
And I'm going to turn it back over to Brittany.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as part of our cemetery portfolio, we are looking to expand our cremation services at all of our cemeteries, not just that of Mount Pleasant. So as this council will recall, in 2018, the township approved and installed a columbarium at the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. Now, within the cemetery realm, we're seeing a significant increase in the interest in cremation options rather than that of a traditional in-ground burial. In fact, cremation rates have increased to 73.1% over that of a mere 47% in 2000. So we're seeing continuous growth and interest in alternative options, including this columbarium. So the columbarium that we've installed in Mount Pleasant is now over 60% sold out. So we know that there's a demand within our township for an expansion of these services. So through our 10-year capital plan, we're looking at doing just that, and we're looking at starting it in 2022 with installing a columbarium in Oxenden Cemetery. Now, the reason we're starting with Oxenden is that is our smallest active cemetery right now. So we're limited on the amount of traditional burials that we can continue to accommodate at that cemetery. This columbarium will allow people to still be buried at that cemetery when it's full, but in a different way rather than that of an in-ground traditional burial. And as I say, throughout the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be looking at expanding these services in other cemeteries, including an additional columbarium in Mount Pleasant and an installation of one at Boyd as well.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And I can remember, thanks to Councillor Barfoot, bringing this particular topic to Council's attention a few years back, and I got to commend her. It's just amazing how important this particular item is in the township. Does council have any questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please go ahead. Or sorry, Madam Chair.
That's okay. So next up, we have our 2022 Treasury operating budget. Not many changes here. I do just want to note that when we are speaking of the other amounts, these are fees that are paid to Real Tax, our third-party company that we use for our tax sale process, and all the fees associated with that are recovered from the applicable property owner. Are there any questions related to Treasury's operating budget?
Must be some questions. Seeing none? Madam Treasurer, I do not see any.
Okay.
And Madam Treasurer, next item is, are we into facilities now? No, we're still in operation.
So this is our administration building operating budget. So that is the building that I'm currently sitting in, along with a few other staff members. Again, there are not many changes that staff are proposing here, the largest one being that of the insurance increase. Are there any questions?
See none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Next up, we have our roads facilities operating budget. So this includes our Campbell, Sarawak, and Derby shops. Again, you'll see the large increase for insurance, and then there is an increase for repairs and maintenance. This is to account for the general maintenance that is required at each location, and the planned repairs and maintenance that we are intending to take are not of a capital nature, which is why they are not a capital ask of council. Are there any questions?
Does council have any questions? Seeing none, might I suggest to council, since we know question before we go to the next item, that we take a 5-minute break. So I see heads nodding, so we'll take a 5-minute break.
If I could please have all of our members enable their video feeds when they return, so we can ensure that we have quorum. Okay, Mr. Mayor, it would appear we have quorum. Carly, if you could please re-enable the live stream. Okay, please go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Treasurer, please go ahead. I believe you were on this slide and there was no question, so please move forward. You're muted.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Steve to go over his capital asks for municipally owned buildings.
Okay, the Director of Operations, Steve, please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. This projects that we're proposing here in front of you today are to upgrade the windows and doors and seals at various locations throughout the township here. So we're looking at the three road facilities there. So the Derby shop, the Campbell shop, and the Sarawak shop, along with some windows and doors at Shallow Lake Arena and also the Derby Community Center. We're looking also for some furniture upgrades and replacements at these locations as well. So we're looking to replace some of the desks that are currently there that are kind of falling apart, some computer chairs that are be a little more ergonomically correct, and then also some upgrades to the lunch tables and stuff as well.
Does Council have any questions? I have a question for the Director of Operations. Steve, you're going to try and put this out as one RFP or one tender?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council, we currently have the tender out right now for all the windows and doors and seals. We've had quite a few interested bidders on it. So it is currently as one big tender out there where multiple people could bid on certain shops or areas, depending on where they're located. So we have it broken out that way.
Okay, thank you. Does Council have any questions? Seeing none, please go ahead, Steve.
We're actually jumping back to myself.
Oh,
we
okay.
have our 2022 general recreation operating budget in front of everyone now. And again, there are not many changes, just the previously discussed salary and benefit changes. Are there any questions of Council?
Does Council have any questions? Seeing none, please go ahead, Madam Treasurer.
Next up, we have our 2022 Parks operating budget. Again, we are not proposing many changes. The few increases that are being proposed are reflected of the increase in insurance costs. Are there any questions of Council?
Steve, just a quick question on the Centennial Park. That project, was it completed in 2021, or is there still some things to do on there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. Yeah, we still have two little items left on the Centennial project to be done, but that will be completely finalized as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Does Council have any questions? See none? Please go ahead.
Next up, we have our 2022 operating budget for the Derby Community Center. Again, there are not many changes that we are proposing. Are there any questions on this budget?
Council have any questions? Seeing none, please go ahead.
Next up, we have the 2022 operating budget for the Campbell Community Center. You will see, again, not very many changes that we are proposing. Are there any questions?
Councillor Pringle, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There, just noticing it's the water testing piece there. We're budgeting $1,800 in 21. We've now went to 4,000. But we made upgrades to change. I noticed it was the same for Derby too. Just what's the difference there?
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Pringle. Yeah, there's been a lot of changes in the water sampling process. So we've been actually testing for more items that are within it. So now we actually have a flat rate across the board for the whole year, and it's the same cost for all facilities.
Steve, a question for me on the Campbell Community Center. Since this community center is going to hopefully be under major renovation this year, how will that impact his budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. It's this is going to still have the water testing being done as part of our process. The insurance is still going to be on that component while we're still working within it. And then that's why this budget really hasn't really seen an increase on what we're trying to do. So we're kind of forecasting with the construction of what we're doing this year.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions? See none, please go ahead.
Next, we have the operating budget for the Shell Lake Community Center. Again, the only large increase is related to insurance. Are there any questions?
Does council have any questions? See none, please go ahead.
I will now ask our Director of Operations to discuss the capital ask of Council.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. So as per the 2020 building condition assessment upgrades, or the report that was presented to Council, the Derby Community Center is looking at approximately $217,000 in upgrades. We're looking at replacing some of the exterior cladding, so the purple metal around the building. That's got some issues with it, some ceiling finishes upstairs in the where the Pioneers Club hangs out or works out, also in some of the other shop portions. Asphalt paving and parking area, we're looking at doing some grading and maintenance around it, trying to get it cleaned up so that make it safe for everybody to, exit out of the cars when they are using the facility, and then also improving the general landscaping around the north portion of the building where we do have some slope issues there. So that's where we're looking to put some money on that. The Shell Lake Community Center, we're looking at a couple concrete little elements or repairs to be done. So along the concrete steps. So we're looking at some minor repairs there. So that's what a ballpark of $15,000 estimated.
Councillor Sullivan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. More of a question about an extra on there too, Stephen. The Shell Lake Community Center, some lighting for the parking lot. It is a dark area at night, and I know that I do take quite a few complaints about that every evening that I'm there. So I was just curious if there's anything in the books for some extra lighting to help out with the nighttime struggles.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sullivan, that's going to be in my next slide when we get down to the various parking group improvements there for the various park enhancement portion there. So that's included in that kind of ask as well. So.
Okay. Steve, a question from me. Replacing the exterior cladding in all these particular maintenance buildings, thinking about climate action and energy efficiency on, would this be a time for us to improve the energy efficiency when it comes to insulation, since we're removing the siding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when we are removing the cladding there, we are going to be taking out the insulation and replacing it with a newer insulation going in there. So when we do take those claddings off, because at the Derby Arena, there is insulation, and then there's a board there as well, plywood there holding it back. So we will be replacing the actual insulation at the same time.
Okay, good to see that. Councillor Thompson, did I see your hand?
Yeah, it flashed up there. I'm just picking my words carefully because I think it's a great idea for us to keep up with both community centers. I think that in both cases, the Campbell and the Derby Community Center, I'm choosing my words carefully because they're both local and they're dear to the heart of people that live in that community. So I'm not picking one over the other. I'm just curious if the changes that we're making are mindful of what the future state is for that facility, And the question, I guess, would be, is do we know the future state of that facility? So when I'm looking at Campbell, I think if we're doing a major upgrade there, we're sort of creating something for what we think the future state will be, and then people will come to the facility. So when I'm looking at the Derby Community Center budget, are the changes we're making there things that we won't be undoing? I guess is my question. That wasn't a very articulate way of doing that. I just think, what do we have in mind for the Derby Community Center as a future state? And is the money we're spending now, is it going to be, are we going to have to undo those things to make a future state? I can't make that any clearer. Sorry, I tried.
Well, Councillor Thompson's a great question, and we as a council have not had any real discussion on what we intend on doing on with the Derby Community Center. And I really think myself that what staff are proposing to replace cladding and insulation on the building will not reflect what the building would be used for. Am I correct in saying that, Steve?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, the stuff that's being proposed here is the outsides of the building. So the stuff that you guys, what council likes to decide down the road of what we're going to do with this building. This is going to be just keeping it up to date, keeping it going, and anything that was being proposed here today will not have to be undone in the future.
That's correct. Deputy Mayor Carlton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm kind of somewhat on the same track as Councillor Thompson, wondering, in a sense, how is that Kilsyth subdivision going to affect the use of the Derby Community Center? And is that something we should have on our agenda going forward to look at what the needs are going to be of that community center for future budget years? Thank you.
Any comments, Steve?
Not at this time. I'm going to write down this note and we'll come back to council.
Thank you. Madam CEO, any comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I'm hearing is a want or a need to look at maybe a number of our facilities and what the future may be. So that can be noted, and staff can take that away and put that in a program. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. If there's no other questions, I'll please go ahead. Who is it? Steve?
This is
Go ahead.
Steve again, please.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. So we have several items that we're looking at doing enhancing of our parks and stuff. A various park enhancement budget, we're looking at $150,000. So this is looking at the line painting of the Sarawak Family Park, park signage improvements, installation of more flagpoles throughout the township, benches, picnic tables, garbage cans, mulch, planters for certain parks that are requesting some planters to be placed in areas. And we're also including lighting for the skate park area and also the Shallow Lake parking lot there, as we've had a lot of questions on that. So that's that component there. The Sarawak Family Park, we have a budget for new playground equipment. We had to take some down that was out of compliance last year, so we are looking to replace it this year. Looking at a walkway to connect from the parking lot down to the water. Rails to trails, we're looking at some fence work this year along the rail trail for roughly about $10,000. The Cobble Beach work, we're looking at roughly about $10,000 for this budget. This is to do some minor grading along the Cobble Beach area trail system that we own in there. And then the Derby Community Center too is we're looking to installation of the Kilsyth playground, and then also the walkway from the Derby Community Center down to the actual playground as well.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Coburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our Director of Operations. Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to say that I appreciate seeing on this budget some commitment to the beautification of some of our park areas. I know it might seem like a small thing to us or maybe sometimes to staff, but our ratepayers really take a lot of pride in many of these parks. And they use them frequently. And if we can get some benches and picnic tables and planters replaced, it seems to me that that's a very small price to pay for the betterment of those communities and those ratepayers. So thank you.
Thank you. Steve, I do understand this as we're talking about municipal park capital work, but when I see line painting, the thought comes into my mind, the municipal parking lot line painting. Was that in last year's budget and will it be done this year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, the line painting for the town administration building is actually built into the operating costs this year. So it was never approved as council never got a budget request for it. So we got it approved through the AOD compliance there, and we'll be painting it this spring at the main office as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you again to our Director of Operations, in that you're speaking of line painting at our municipal parking lot and accessibility. I would hope that we will be assigning more accessible parking closest to the door that leads through into the chambers. I think we could do maybe a better job of delineating those particular parking spots to folks who need them most. Thank you.
I believe, Steve, I believe this has gone to the County Accessibility Committee for review and comment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Coburn and Council, that is correct. This the plan for the municipal parking lot has been approved by the Grey County Accessibility Committee. They've also provided us with suggestions and improvements to it for that kind of components of looking for accessibility parking spots. So we do actually have an approved plan from them, and that's what we will be following going forward.
Okay, thank you. So there's no other questions. Please go ahead, and I believe it's still Steve.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council, the Campbell Community Center. It's we're looking at a budget of 1.695 for it to address the building condition items and also the 10-year capital plan outlook as well. Interior renovation and accessibility upgrades as we apply for the grant. And then also we're looking at currently our fee mode, having the consultant / engineer architect to come in, do those upgrades, design them for us, and then we can go out to tender to get it built for this year.
Thank you, Steve. Steve, can you take a real quick minute and just give us an update where that project's at?
So the project right now is we are currently in the RFP moment there. So we've had a lot of interest on people picking it up to do the design / build component of it. We're currently had the rec guys when we were doing during the last kind of slowdown of the COVID there, we had the recreation staff and they're removing boards and fences and stuff like that. So we've opened it up, done some real demolition kind of work to it to make sure that, you know, to minimize costs of what we're going to be trying to save some money on. So right now it's been opened up really nicely. Concrete's in good shape. So that's where we're at.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Does council have any questions? Seeing none, please move on. Madam Treasurer, I believe you're up.
Yes, so next we have our 2022 Building and Bylaw Enforcement Operating Budget. You will see an increase in salaries and benefits. As discussed before, this is to allow for seasonal bylaw enforcement support. And otherwise, there are not many changes that are included. I do just want to note that the other at the bottom is our cloud permit annual fees. Are there any questions?
Does council have any questions? Councillor Barfoot, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Treasurer, you brought up about seasonal bylaw enforcement.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I guess the question I have for Mr. Lewis is that money well spent? I'd asked for sort of a list of all the offenses and that, and I don't recall getting it. Or would we be better to hire someone on a temporary basis rather than the company?
Mr. Lewis, please go ahead. Tim.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Barfoot. Council. Actually, Councillor Barfoot, to answer your question, we are in the process of looking at that. okay, and changing the way we're supplying that service. And we are looking at, hiring somebody in position, starting them off on a part-time basis, and then, see what we need from there. So, yeah, we'll be getting looked at, and it will be getting revamped. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Madam CEO, any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Mr. Lewis has covered it. This is an area, building, bylaw, and planning that we will be doing some significant work over the next year and a half, just to look at the services we're providing to our community and how we best do that, and resources that might be needed. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Tim, Madam Treasurer, are you going ahead?
So if there are no other
There's no
questions
other
from council, I will turn it over to Tim to discuss his capital asks of council.
Please go ahead, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. We have one capital ask here. We're looking for an additional pickup. The building department is, as you are all well aware, seeing a steady increase in permit applications and inspection services needed. As twofold, it's partly due to the number of applications coming in, but it's also to do with the changes in the building code and things that we have to do to make sure that we are in compliance and doing everything that's expected of us. We anticipate the trend in building permits increasing to continue as our service area continues to grow at a rapid pace. We didn't see much of a lull there. As you could imagine, it used to be years ago, you used to see a lull between, December and March, but that doesn't happen anymore, not in this area anyway. And, we're already seeing the permit numbers going up this year. So, we have a healthy demand for property and for building in this area. The Hyundai SUV that was the department's second vehicle, it's been acquired by the operations department. Therefore, it's no longer available to our department. It will be important to have the use of a second truck for the upcoming season and beyond, as the second truck will provide us with the potential for dealing with future growth in the department should there be a need for department expansion. And, we've already discussed bylaw officer would need a vehicle to get around when they're in. And with the demand on Luke and I to provide additional inspection services, either through the code or through the number of permits that are coming in, we need to be able to get around and respond to things quickly. So.
Thank you, Tim. I guess a question, it might be for Steve, I don't know. The truck that Troy Unruh used to be driving, where'd that end up? Where is it now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, that truck has been put into the operations department for the road staff to use. That truck has been utilized for running a road patrol, and then also will be used for with the lead hands going forward.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions on Tim's request? Seeing none, please go ahead. I believe we're into planning now.
That is correct. Next up, we have our 2022 planning operating budget. And there are not many changes here. I do just want to note that the contract service that council had approved for assistance in the planning department is funded from unspent salaries and benefits. So they are included in that line. Are there any questions?
Does council have any questions? See none?
Okay, I will turn it over to Jen to discuss her capital asks of council.
Madam Planner, please go ahead.
Thank you. So Planning for sustainable growth and development in Georgian Bluffs requires background studies to determine maximum growth potential as well as our limitations. So given the existing development patterns that and the potential to fully service development, we are focusing studies in the East Linton area. So right now we have a master servicing study in progress, and we're proposing studies for 2022 to provide additional direction for development. So one of those is a community improvement plan. And as this first slide indicates, the planning department is requesting $35,000 for to fund a community improvement plan. Often referred to as a CIP, it's effectively a tool that allows a municipality to direct funds and implement policy initiatives towards a specifically defined project area. The purpose of this plan is to encourage revitalization initiatives or stimulate development and redevelopment. And an example of that would be to provide incentives for developers to provide affordable housing, as well as to encourage business owners to engage in facade improvements, just to make our areas more attractive for tourism. So once implemented, this plan would allow the township to provide tax assistance, grants, or loans to assist in the revitalization of lands or buildings within that community, within that defined area. And so again, we would focus this plan towards East Linton, given its growth potential. Right now, we have our planning consultants that are updating our OP. They will be including enabling policies within that OP so that the township can have a community improvement plan. And then at the moment, I'm working with 2 students from Ryerson on a background report to Council, just to provide you with additional information on the benefits of a community improvement plan. And then with those students, we are actually scheduled to have a meeting with the county just to discuss where we can increase efficiencies. So there's definitely a concerted effort there to provide council with the right information to move forward with a community improvement plan. So if we could move to the next slide.
Just 1 minute, Madam Planner. Deputy Mayor Carlton, please go ahead.
Thank you. Just a comment or question, I guess. The county has been giving $10,000 per year to each lower tier toward community improvement plans. Are those funds utilized here, or what has been happening with those funds? And I think that goes back to maybe 3 years that they've been doing that.
I know that we have been receiving those amounts, and the county has indicated that we should be moving forward with our CIP, but I would defer to the treasurer to provide specific information on the use of those funds at this time.
Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
So right now, those funds are actually sitting in a reserve. We have not used them. This project here, it is being planned to be funded from reserves, which we would then use some of those funds for.
Okay, does that answer your question, Deputy Mayor Carlton? Okay. So we'll move, no other questions, we'll move forward. So I guess, Madam Planner, you're still up?
Yes, thank you. So this request is for $85,000 to hire a consultant to go through and provide us with a master stormwater management plan for the East Linton area. So this would be done working with the operations department, and really we need to have a better understanding of how to manage stormwater. As council is aware, we are notified regularly by residents of the East Linton area of stormwater issues. So this stormwater plan, basically it's outlining characteristics of the watershed, defining the existing system we have, and it makes recommendations on how to direct future growth and development in that East Linton area. So that would work in tandem with our master servicing study, as well as the community improvement plan. So it gives us a more fulsome understanding of what's happening in that East Linton area and just exactly what our capacity for growth is.
Thank you, Jen. Before I go to Councillor Thompson, I would like to ask the question to either you or Steve. Do we not have a master stormwater management plan down on the Balmy Beach area down through there? And we have some major drainage work going on the Church Side Road. Is this not sort of part of the same study? Who can answer that? Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. In 2018, a drainage study was completed on the Balmy Beach area. Staff are working with those recommendations when they were doing the ditching program last year, and then also continuing on this year as well. That will also feed into this whole master stormwater management plan. This is looking at the whole East Linton area, which goes all the way up to Presqu'île and Grey Road 1, all the way down to Old Beach to that Indian Acres bridge there. So it's looking at the drainage for all those areas, and it's going to take in consideration all other studies that were done and merge them all together so we have one document to go forward with.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Councillor Thompson, I believe I've seen your hand up.
You did. You asked the first question, and Stephen gave a partial explanation of that. I was just wondering, I'm interested in this, and I'm wondering, so what's the perimeter? So if you're looking at this, when we're saying East Linton, what's the perimeter of the study? Where does it stretch to?
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council, I'm going to actually pass it on to the senior planner here, just to make sure I have the right idea in my head of where it is, because I'm going to say it's going to follow the same location of what our water and sanitary studies been doing on for East Linton. So that's where I'm going, but I'm hoping the senior planner can help me out.
Madam Planner, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that is correct. So we would look at the same study boundaries as what the master servicing study is including, just because we've got that examination of growth potential for servicing. So we need to look at it for, it's a more comprehensive approach to include that study area for our stormwater as well. Because don't forget this, when we look at the stormwater management, it's part of a watershed. So there'll be some exploration of that watershed outside of the administrative boundaries. So if you typically look to the former Sarawak Township, that is effectively really the study area for the project, not so much including Brook at this time.
Okay, so I think we're getting closer. That's my point is, so if we're looking at the same study area as the service report, what's the difference in this than that? And you may have said that and I just haven't picked up on it. And then sort of further, what's the maybe it's easiest to say it this way, what's the north boundary and the south boundary of this proposed plan?
Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the northern boundary would be pretty much the Sitacrity subdivision, and the southern boundary, I believe, would be Indian. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name.
Indian Acres?
That's okay.
Indian Acres, thank
Indian
you.
Acres. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I got you. So it's comprehensive, like it stretches the whole way up Balmy Beach subdivision and all of that then.
Yes. And while, sorry, Councillor Thompson.
No, you go ahead. I was just wondering, so how is this one different than the 2018? I think was my other question.
I just wanted to point out, this is going to be a study that looks at the growth potential. It's not something over a certain period of time. So it'll provide us with a development plan to move forward. So as you know, we can't just go through and develop the entire area within a short period of time. It will provide us with a planning horizon over the next, say, 25 years, and allow us to then budget appropriately and make planning decisions for where development should occur next. The difference between the what's going on right now with the master servicing study is that looks at what our servicing capacity is for water and sewer, and what plans we'll need to make moving forward. For example, say to upgrade the water system, or where those lines, those sewer lines, the sewer infrastructure should be placed to allow for the most efficient method of development. And then the stormwater plan looks at the drainage in the area. Where is the water coming from? Where should we be directing it? What outlets do we need down along towards Balmy Beach? And that will allow planning and operations to work with developers to say what your plan is proposing is in accordance with our plan, and it looks after our plan is looking after the best interest of our residents in our township.
Thank you, Madam Planner. All I was making out, I think Councillor Thompson was trying to suggest the same thing, is that we've had many different stormwater management plans or studies done in that particular area to do with drainage. We know we do have problems all down through there. And this new master stormwater management plan will incorporate all the work that was done in these other studies too. So it sort of incorporates everything to bring it all together. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. It's going to be a comprehensive development document that both planning and operations can refer to, and it will provide direction for the township for growth moving forward. We need to understand, as you know, the watershed it's a larger system, so we need to understand where that water is coming from and where it needs to go, and to reduce future impacts. Right now, what's happening is we have a development application coming in, and we look at that development application, and there needs to be greater consideration for that larger area and not just for that immediate property. While 20 lots in a given area may not appear to have an impact, we need to understand what the long-term impact is, and this study is going to help provide that information.
Thank you for that. Councillor Thompson, excuse me, did you have any other comments?
No, I guess my question would be, are we like, that's a heck of a big area. Does the amount that we have allotted for that cover it? I guess we're only talking about the study, we're not talking about anything else, but do you think that'll cover it, that amount?
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to the Director of Operations on that. We had worked together on the conceptualization of this plan, and I know that he's been discussing amounts with the different engineering companies, so I'll defer to him on that.
Before I go to Steve, Madam CEO, any comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is also a project that staff is investigating whether there's funding from other levels of government to help with this amount. So it is a great question, and we would have to scope this project in a pretty defined manner, because you could imagine that we could be looking at more and more area. But I'll let Mr. Dahlmeyer talk about how the $85,000 came to be, but this is a project that we're actually looking to leverage funding from other levels of government as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Steve, please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. Yeah, the $85,000 was looking at the best practices with drainage superintendents in conversation with our drainage superintendent as well. We are looking at the overall comprehensive plan, but also we're looking at, we need to really scope down on what we're looking for, because it could, potentially go as far out as far as you want to go kind of deal. So the 85,000 is what the drainage superintendent was feeling comfortable with when he was doing the review with me as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any other questions on this particular item? Seeing none, please move ahead. Sam?
So next up, we have our 2022 Operations Administration operating budget. The largest increase seen here is from the salaries and benefits, and that takes into account the second road supervisor being employed for a full year, the cost of livings, and appropriate step increases. Are there any questions from council?
Does council have any questions? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Okay, I will turn it over. Oh, not yet, sorry, I apologize. Next, we have our roads operating budget. The salaries and benefits, as previously discussed, includes 5 new operator positions, which was approved by council back in 2021 as part of our levels of service policy. Training and conferences and conventions, that has also been increased to account for the new staff. And same with protective clothes, that has been increased as well due to the new staff. We have also kind of done a change in where some of our loose top, hard top, roadside care funding has fallen to be reflective of projects that we are hoping to take on in the coming year. Are there any questions of council?
Does council have any questions? Steve, define loose top.
Loose top, through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, loose top means gravel program, also your roadside safety devices. That's where we got like post and cable installations, adding gravel to it, dust suppression. That's what loose top is.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Sutherland, please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was also roadside care. Is that more so like tree cutting and grass cutting and stuff like that? Is that what I was taking of that?
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sutherland. That is correct. That is for tree removal, brushing along the roadside edges, roadside grass cutting, along also with installation of posts for traffic signage.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councillor Sutherland?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other question of council, we'll move forward. And Madam Treasurer, who is next?
Next, we have our 2022 fleet operating budget. So these are our operation vehicles. We have increased the repairs and maintenance account to, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Sorry, there is a general increase in the repairs and maintenance. As vehicles get older, we are required to do more work. Any work that we are planning is not of a capital nature, which is why it is not a capital ask of council. For our licenses and GPS, we are still currently running 2 softwares as a means to test the new system to ensure that it is operating and providing us with correct and accurate information. Are there any questions of council?
Does council have any questions? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Next, we have our 2022 garbage and recycling operating budget. The largest increase is for garbage collection, which is reflective of our agreement. Are there any questions?
The only question I have on it, and maybe it's not the appropriate time, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We've had numerous complaints of various issues to do with garbage pickup. And I'm just hoping that staff will really, really seriously look at that, which you have, but maybe really look at it again about how our garbage contractors are operating I'm trying to say that very politely, but it's just more of a statement than anything, I guess. Councillor Barth, I believe I've seen your hand.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Steve. When was the last time we had an increase in bag tag fees?
Steve?
Seems quite a few years ago, isn't it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Barfoot, I would have to do some research on that. I don't have the information in front of me, and I'd have to get back to you on that.
Madam Treasurer, can you make a comment on that or not?
I don't know the exact year, but staff are currently looking and reviewing our fees and services bylaw. So that is something we will be looking at as part of that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pringle, please. Councillor Pringle, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just same thoughts as Councillor Barfoot there too. I was kind of wondering the same thing myself. I know we've been at $2 as long as I can remember. So not that I'm in disagreement with $2, but I think there is a revenue of more cash flow there too. I know just by taking one bag of garbage into the Miller Waste Recycling Depot is $6.58 a bag now. So yeah, along the same lines as Councillor Barfoot, I was wondering about that myself.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barfoot, hopefully I didn't cut you off. Were you finished? You're muted, Carol.
You are muted.
It's been quite a few years, and I think we should get a report on that and adjust them when I look at the fees for garbage and recycling. And thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions on this item? And I think staff have noted all your good comments. So Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
I am going to ask our Director of Operations to speak to this slide, please.
So in front of council this afternoon is the proposed 2022 roadwork program. So service treatment, we're looking at roughly about 7 kilometers of road to be redone this year. Micro servicing, this is actually a new process that we're applying. It's going to be applied to all the surface treated roads that we did last year to give us a new wearing surface on top, so that it extends the life of our assets. So we're looking at roughly about 8 kilometers of road, or 16 kilometers of road there. Gravel maintenance, we're looking to resurface roughly about 20 kilometers of gravel roads this year, which will bring back to life and bring the life cycle analysis on those back down as well. Route and seal, we're looking to, improve the driving surface of some of our asphalt roads where they're still in that good level of service, but we know we have some cracking, horizontal and longitude cracking there. We'll fill them in and then look at microing in next year's budget. And then also concession 16, we're looking to add more material in the back portion from the bridge to the dead end of that area where it is kind of slipping into the swamp. There is a map that shows where all the work is proposed for 2022. It is part of the budget package and it's shown as Appendix A.
Thank you, Steve. A question for me, since I don't see any from Councillor yet. Steve, it's been our practice in the past that we would construct a road 1 year, wait a year or so before we either double surface treatment or pave whatever. And one road I'm thinking in particular is the Linwood Road, going from the bridge to concession or County Road 17. It's in very bad shape, deteriorating more every year. Is that something you have in your schedule for work in the future soon, or what's happening there?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, so all roads are reviewed every year through the roads needs assessment. We drive all the roads, we assess them all to create our 10-year capital plans. So that road there, I believe, is coming up in the 2023 budget area, just by looking at the map quickly here.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Sutherland, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would reiterate that that road is deteriorating. It's sinking. If you want to take a drive on it right now and try to do the speed limit, there's a good chance you're not going to, right? Yeah, Mr. Mayor knows the road. He travels it too. I guess I was also, I'll ask the one I have about a bridge in that bridge section then.
Okay. No, it's just, it's a road, the Linwood Road, Steve, is a road that gets tremendous amount of traffic in the sense it's a shortcut going between the county roads, and it's just something I realized that the construction, like filter cloth, whatever you may decide to put down, needs to be done the year before, but it is a road that I really hope you can really seriously look at it. Okay, if there's no other questions on that section, then I'll please go ahead. And I believe it's Steve again.
So I'm just going to jump in before Steve makes his comments. Earlier, we were asked about the airport reserve, the funds proceeds from the airport that were put into reserves. This is the project that we are looking at using some of those funds for. So I will pass it over to Steve.
Go ahead, Steve.
Through you, Mr. Mayor to Council. So Elm Street is a joint project between South Bruce Peninsula and Georgian Bluffs. The bylaw was passed in 2019 as per Article 20 of the bylaw there, or the agreement. Georgian Bluffs and South Bruce Peninsula agreed to split the costs equally for design, reconstruction, and service upgrades along Elm Street between the highway to Thompson Road there. This includes the road, sidewalks, water, sanitary, storm sewers, curb and gutter. Georgian Bluffs and South Peninsula agreed to fund these projects in accordance with the following schedules. So design was done in 2020, and then construction to be started in 2021, and then completed no later than 2022. So it is going to be going out to tender this year, and then that's our cost to the project. So the overall project is roughly about $6 million. Our funding cost is going to be about $3 million. On completion of this project, the reconstruction and the upgrades along this section of road, we will assume South Bruce Peninsula will resume full ownership of that segment of road for the operating rights of all water and sanitary services. Road, sidewalk, storm sewers will remain a joint and equal responsibility between Georgian Bluffs and South Bruce Peninsula. So we'll have ongoing maintenance going after this project is done.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Thompson, please go ahead.
I expect I probably just got my question in first. So when we look at the overall budget for the project being $6 million, if that's the price tag, so at the end of this, they would like to maintain ownership and operating rights to the water and sanitary services. So are they bearing the full cost of the construction for those?
No, that's going to be, through you, Mr. Mayor to Council, that is a joint effort. So as per the agreement, the water supply agreement that was signed by the townships, the township is paying for those upgrades as well. So we're paying 50% of all works from from the highway to Thompson Side Road.
A question.
Yeah, I'm not done. So help me wrap my head around this. So we would pay for them to put the services in the ground, but then we'd cede the ability for them to say, well, you can't use it, or you can only use it on my terms.
Through you, Mr.
It's sort
Mayor.
of like I'll help you. I'll share the cost of building a garage, but then I'll decide if I'm going to let you use it or how much rent I'm going to charge you. I think and maybe this isn't the place to talk about that, but I remember when we negotiated the last water agreement and the type of negotiation it was. So I'd feel really silly to pay for half the services and then have them hold a gun to our head again. I think it would be absurd.
Councillor Thompson, I can remember a conversation when this project sort of come online that at that time we owned an airport at that time, and we thought about maybe we should share the cost of upgrading the sewer water facilities up that road for future use of the airport or that area. And I don't know if that's still the way we're thinking or not, although we don't own the airport, for future growth in Georgian Bluffs and maybe at the airport, is it would make sense to have a conversation with that owner now to see if they wanted to share some of those costs for future growth at that facility? It's just,
Yeah, I think South Bruce Peninsula should talk to that guy maybe.
well, since we're putting the services in now, it makes sense to upgrade those services now instead of tear the road up and do it later. I believe Deputy Mayor Carleton.
Thank you. I guess my comment somewhat goes along with what Councillor Thompson was saying. And if they are going to assume full ownership of those services there, then in the future, are they going to assume full costs of any future maintenance and repairs needed there? That a future agreement on this boundary road wouldn't have us paying for what then is there, what they own.
Steve, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor and Council. The water main also services some of the properties in Georgian Bluffs. Right now, they are part of the Oxenden water system, so we would be paying our water rates to South Bruce Peninsula. They would still do the maintenance and components that we would still provide the water to the meter, then it would come to us, and then we would have our own Aqua contract on top to do the maintenance and works as well. So we are upgrading some of the current water lines that are out there on our segment of the road. That's where this is also included.
Further question.
Go ahead.
Is that wouldn't be part of the Oxenden system in there? Isn't that the, what, South Gateway or something? That wouldn't be part of Oxenden there.
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Carleton, it is actually connected to the Oxenden system. Both of them are connected where when the meter comes out, it does connect to both areas.
Okay. Councillor Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was basically the same as the deputy mayor's. If are they going to continue in the future, then they would pay for all upgrades necessary to their water system.
Steve, any comment?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sutherland. So they would pay for the upgrades on their section of the water main. And then once it hits where the water main is, where the water meter where they provide us the water, then it becomes the township's responsibility with our Aqua or for our contractor that currently manages it on our side.
Okay. Councillor Barfoot, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just reading that second paragraph again, and it makes me nervous. Did we not share in the Elm Street road maintenance, such as plowing and patching and that? And how did that go?
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Barfoot, we do projects together on this segment of road because it is a boundary road between the two municipalities. So we do go to a certain point, and then Wyerton or South Bruce Peninsula picks up on the other section where we stop. We do a lot of pothole repairs out there. We are doing constant water digs in the area as well. So we don't bill each other, but we do kind of keep tabs of what's going on.
Thank you, Steve. Madam Treasurer, a question maybe for you, since you handle the money portion. We have approximately 2.1 million, 2.3 million left of the airport sale. Are you as staff suggesting that all that money be put towards this project?
Yes, that is correct. The remaining funds between what we have left from the airport proceeds and the $3 million, we would also fund from reserves, being the road construction reserve.
And I guess the question I have to you and staff, how is that benefiting all the ratepayers in Georgian Bluff? And who can answer that? Madam CEO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I might invite Ms. Buchanan to comment on the difference between funding this project from the airport reserves and alternate ways that it might be funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam?
Yes, so right now we are proposing it to be funded completely from reserves, that being a combination of the airport surplus that was put into the working capital and the remaining from the roads construction. There are other methods available for funding, such as loans, but I would be very cautious and hesitant on getting a loan for the full amount. And if council wished to proceed with looking into a loan, that would have other budget impacts as part of the loan repayments and interest payments.
Thank you, Sam. I have hands up all over the place, so I'll try and get to just one at a time. I'm going to go to Councillor Pringle first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There, yeah, you actually hit it right in the head there too on, that was my question, was actually what portion of the reserve for the airport was going to go towards this project. And to see that it's all going to go there, I don't really believe that really benefits all the people that have paid for this over the last 6 years. It's great to do the upgrade on Elm Street. It's great for the people on Elm Street, but there's a pile of us in this township that have paid money towards that airport for the existence that we had it. And I really believe there should be a benefit come back to each taxpayer that put money towards this. So I'm in agreement that we may have to look at different avenues to come up with this money, as I don't believe what we've all paid for should go into one project. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. I believe Deputy Mayor Carlton was next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this project is one we've known is kind of on the horizon for a number of years, and I thought we were putting into reserves for it all along. So when we put into reserves, I guess my question is, are we focusing on specific projects or just putting into a roads reserve? And if it focuses on specific projects in the future, how much did we put in for Elm Street for the past few years? Thank you.
Madam Treasurer, can you answer that?
Yes, so we do try to set them aside in the reserve for that specific project related to Elm Street. I don't remember the exact amounts included in the 2020 and 2021 budget, but there was some pre-construction engineering costs that we did contribute and reimburse South Bruce Peninsula for our half. I think we had done 70,000 each year, that maybe 100,000 is sitting in that roads construction reserve that was set aside specifically for Elm Street. But again, I do not have the exact numbers in front of me.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Councillor Thompson, please go ahead.
Thanks. I don't want to be responsible for belaboring this, but I think we're tying two things together here. And I don't know that our spending $3 million on a stretch of road that will be 1.25 miles long, I think, is a wise use of money, given that. So I would suggest that lots of this money is probably going to services. And so are the services going out there part of a good comprehensive plan? And so on the south side of the road, there's 5 to 10 homes, more than 5, less than 10. And then you're farmland. So are we looking at building some sort of a multi-residential property out there? Is that something, like, I don't know that, I don't mean to put our planner on the spot, but I don't know if we can even do that there, because you're into a lot of agricultural land and airport protected land. And if we're doing services for the airport property, is it really is it the best to come from there anyway? I think it would probably be better to come down Grey Road 1. I just wonder about, if are we repairing a road that's 1.5 miles in stretch? I think that makes good sense. Is that a $6 million project that we'd be responsible for $3 million of? Whew, that's a heck of a lot of money for 1.5 miles.
Councillor Thompson,
I don't want to.
Councillor Thompson,
I say no to this, but I think we should move on. Yeah.
No, I agree. Good comments, but I do not believe that the services like sewer and water are going to be extended all the way to Thompson Side Road. I do not believe they're going to be extended any more than what their boundaries are now, which is quite a ways back from where the actual construction is going. Madam CEO, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I have to admit, I wasn't around at the time that the agreement was struck and the bylaw was passed by council, but I would turn to our treasurer and our director of operations to, I mean, I'm not sure that there's a choice. We have some obligations as per an agreement that has been signed and council approved. So I just want us to be clear. I think we have an obligation as the township to contribute to this. And I think it's really a question. Our treasurer has made a recommendation of how best to pay for the project. But I just wanted to provide, and I'll maybe invite our treasurer. Are my comments correct that we really don't have a choice in the matter?
Tam?
Yes, that is correct. Unfortunately, Article 20 of the reference bylaw, we are required to pay for our 50% of this project.
Madam Treasurer, I don't disagree with your comments and the Madam CEO that yes, we do have to pay our share of this, but I'm still going back to my original statement. The whole idea at the sale of the airport was to save that money, put it in a capital reserve fund. So we've used it to benefit all the ratepayers in Georgia Bus. And I just don't really feel that we're doing that now by putting it all for this one road construction. That's the only comments I want to make. I stand corrected if I'm thinking differently. Councillor Thompson, I see your hand is still up.
Sorry, that was just because I guess I'd need to look at Article 20. I think it would be, I would be surprised to say that we're on the hook for 50% of whatever project is to come and whatever scope of the project is to be without some negotiating capability. But I seem to be corrected.
Any other questions from council at this time? Councillor Barfoot, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The more I hear everyone's discussions, the more nervous I'm getting. First of all, how many water hookups will there be? Because at one time, when they were talking about extending somewhere else, they only had so many services available. This revenue that was generated from the sale of the airport, I asked very specifically, was it going into a specified reserve? No, it was just going in for what, capital or operations, which made me nervous at the time. This money was accumulated by all the ratepayers in Georgian Bluffs, not just by a few. And I don't feel we're doing our ratepayers any favors if we put this through. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot. It's just that, Madam Treasurer, I respect your opinion, and all you're trying to do is suggest a way of paying for this project. But is there any way, as a council, can we look at the overall project to see, first of all, making sure we're paying the right share of the portion, and that we have proper guidance when it's done, that we do have some kind of say in what happens to the services? And can we relook at to see if, I realize we'd have to borrow the money or whatever to do our 50% share, which we have to do, but could we revisit it and see if there's another avenue we could take before we make the final decision?
Yes, so I have documented this discussion, and staff will look at seeing what other options may be available to the township.
Okay, because today we're reviewing the budget. We're not really approving anything. We're just simply reviewing it from start to finish. So we do have ample time to come back and readjust things. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Deputy Mayor Carleton, please.
Thank you. Just to further with that report coming back, is it possible we have sufficient funds in our roads reserves to do this, that we just have to pay ourselves back? Is that an option?
Madam Treasurer, I don't know, you want to comment later?
If it's okay with the deputy mayor, I can bring back a answer to that with a separate report.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Barth, I believe I've seen your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was somewhat along the lines of the deputy mayor's question. I wanted to know how much is in reserves.
Yeah.
And I want to know the whole story, and I don't think we're getting it just yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's here for discussion, and we're having a great discussion on this. I think staff understand where council is coming from, and we'll definitely bring back more information and report on this particular item. Am I correct in saying that, Madam CEO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, yes. I think Ms. Buchanan and I have noted this as a follow-up item. As she indicated, there will be follow-ups with council and adjustments made before the budget is finalized. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Any other questions? Councillor Barfoot?
Just one further comment, and then I'm done on this topic. For years and years, we've spent money to keep the airport open for the enjoyment of some, when our ratepayers were screaming and hollering about what it was costing us. Now, we've sold the airport. We have a few dollars left over, going hog wild and borrowing more money to benefit a few people. This is certainly going to benefit South Bruce Peninsula, I think, more than it's going to benefit us.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I think there's no other questions on this, Madam Treasurer. Please go ahead.
Next up, we have our bridges and sidewalks, and I invite our Director of Operations to discuss these.
Steve, please go ahead.
For you, Mr. Mayor, to council. Bridges and sidewalk work this year that's proposed is the bridge maintenance and repairs. We're looking at $100,000. So we're looking at some replacement of signages, guardrail replacements, and also wash and sweeping along some of the bridges that have been listed in our OSIM reports. Sidewalk and curb replacement, we've got a budget of $25,000. This is a new program this year. We are looking at some areas in the village of Shallow Lake to repair some sidewalk bays that are cracked and need to be repaired. Some curbs within Cobble Beach that on the sections that we owned, same with some sidewalk bays as well. So this is what we're looking at for this project for these two areas.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Sullivan, I believe you had a question on bridges before.
I did. Good memory, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. We've talked about it many times in the past, and I have talked to the Director of Operations about it as well, and was told it was going to be budgeted for. Was the bridge that we temporarily closed on Side Road 3. So I was curious to know if there's an update on that, if that's going to be added into the budget, and where we're going to go from there.
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sutherland, we have reached out to our consultant that's been doing all the reports on that segment, on that bridge there. We're just waiting for them to finally give us the report back of what's going on out there, and then we can follow up for our next steps on that component of that bridge / open box culvert.
Councillor Sullivan, does that answer your question?
It does, yes. So is that meaning that it's like, being that it's not, we don't have anything in the budget, is it going to be in the budget then next year? Is that the plan?
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sutherland, once I get the full detailed information back from the consultant, then I'll be able to bring a report back to council to explain what's the next steps are on that particular bridge, along with the other bridge that is closed or that's been reviewed as well. So once I get that information, I will be bringing it back in the report to council for your decisions on next steps.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Councillor Pringle, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just to support for Mr. Councillor Sullivan there too. Yeah, that's been a 2-year process right now. We've been waiting on these reports to get back on these bridges. Seems like it's taken a long time. I know it takes time to do it, but does it take 2 years? So I'm kind of in line with Councillor Sullivan there that, you know, are we going to have the funds available for that this year? Because I don't really think it's something that should be delayed another year.
Comments from anyone? Steve, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Pringle. Once we get that information back, right now they're doing an archaeological assessment of the area, so it is taking a bit longer than typical. I know the consultants also reached out to SON, so there's some other information that they're looking for as well. So we're kind of playing the waiting game right now, but once we do get this information, we will be bringing it back to this council to make a decision on next steps.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Thompson, I believe your hand was up. No? Okay, there's no other questions.
Nope, that's good, thanks.
No. Okay, no other questions. Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Next, we have our equipment and fleet capital ask, so I invite Steve to discuss these.
Please go ahead, Steve.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. So under reviewing the fleet components with the operations department, so looking with the Parks and Rec division and also the roads division and the biodigester and all those other departments within the operations thing, we've come to bring forward a little bit of a request this year. We're looking to purchase a gravel retriever that will help us out for retrieving the gravel that's been pushed back in the ditches from when they're doing the road grading or the winter plowing in the winter season. So that allows us to bring back the gravel instead of just adding more down and doing ditching programs as well. So that's one portion that we're looking at. We're looking to go to 2 SUVs instead of having pickup trucks for the supervisors. So the 2 supervisors, 2 pickup trucks will actually move into the operations fleet component there, where then the staff will actually be able to go around to pick up stuff and have the box to do their day-to-day operations. We're looking at one 1-ton pickup truck to be added to the fleet as well. We're looking for that for, you know, carrying signs, culverts, cold mix, hot mix to job sites instead of trying to push them into smaller half-tons. We're looking at purchasing a brand new half-ton this year to replace one of the existing trucks that we have, and then that truck will be sold to through the auction process. And then we're also looking at an actual box grader that will attach to the back of one of the Parks and Recs trucks, so that when they are doing they can kind of do the fine grade on the rail trail instead of having other ATV or the other agencies look at maintaining our trail. So that's where we're looking at for equipment this year.
Okay, questions from council? Councillor Pringle?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are there any on the 1-ton pickup there? To the director of operations there, was there thoughts of plow going on that truck at all, or strictly just for carrying signs and stuff around?
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Pringle, that is correct. We are looking for a snowplow to go on top of that truck as well. It'll help us out with our parking lot program as well, and it's also some of our smaller dead-end roads instead of having a contractor look after it.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Carlton?
Thank you. I guess I'm just remembering that there was an SUV that was in bylaw enforcement and building department that I thought I heard has gone over to operations. Plus there would be a truck that Mr. Unruh used to drive that with Aqua doing the contract with the bio we wouldn't need. So I guess I'm curious as to why we need so many new vehicles. Not questioning, just curious as to why.
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Carlton, it's because of all the new staff we've hired on as well. We want to make sure that we have proper equipment to do the tasks at hand, with the aspects of, you know, making sure that we continue with our levels of service and then also other items that we need to achieve.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
So again, we have Steve presenting the studies.
Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. So
Sorry,
we got
can
two.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
interrupt? Can we go back one slide? Can we go back one slide again? So I think I should stop us. So I thought I heard earlier that the reason we needed a truck in bylaw was because a vehicle went to operations, and that we couldn't use the biodigester because it went to operations. But we need more in operations to keep up with the ones in. So I don't want to get lost in the numbers. I'm not doubting it. I'm kind of confused. So then, in addition to the 2 that went to operations, we need some more. So are these, like this 1/2 ton pickup, is that the one that's actually bylaws that we're talking and building, or is this an additional one?
Additional. Steve?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Thompson. The SUV that the building and bylaw department was talking about earlier, that's actually for the administration office. So when they go to conferences and training seminars, or they have to go out to look at a job site, it's there for, and also other items that they do. So the finance department, the planning department do use that vehicle, is for that component there. So they have a vehicle instead of using mileage for booking mileage against the township. The 2 SUVs are for the supervisors. The new 1/2 ton truck that's listed here is actually a replacement of an existing truck that we're looking to kind of push down the road. So it's just, I know the building department and bylaw department is looking for a brand new truck for their extra body because they're short one truck, whereas this one is actually a replacement of an older truck that will be selling off down the road.
So this will be 7 new vehicles in operations. If you take these 5 plus Troy's, plus, I guess Troy's is already in operations, plus the one from the administration building.
So we're not taking the actual administration building. That stays with the administration building. So that's not actually part of the operation budget, the SUV. So that one's staying with the administration building. So that one belongs to administration. And then these would be actually these would be the requests for the operations department, parks and rec and facilities, and then also the roads division.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, Steve, but I'm totally confused myself, Ryan. The 2 superintendents we have out there now each have a 1/2 ton truck or whatever. Now they're going to be changed to SUVs, so that gives you 2 more trucks there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, those 2 trucks will go into the operations side. We are using them for our staff to use when the supervisors are away. So it's just to keep up with the current staff level that we have hired on with us.
How many 1/2 ton trucks do we have in the operations department right now? 1/2 tons and 1 tons.
So we have 2 1 tons in operations right now. So 1 for Campbell, 1 for Sarawak. And then we have 4 1/2 ton pickup trucks. So we have 2 for the lead hands and then 2 for the supervisors. And then when we go to job sites, we actually have to take single axles and tandem axle trucks to these job sites when it is not required.
Okay. Ryan, I sort of cut you off. Were you finished with your question?
Oh, no, I have more questions now, but I'm just not sure how we. So it's looking like 7. No, not looking like 7. Yeah, it's looking like 6 new vehicles. 6. So 6 transport vehicles. Or am I lost in my numbers? It's 5 new vehicles.
Can you clarify that, please, Steve?
So there will be an additional 4 new vehicles, including the building and bylaw, and then 1 replacement vehicle. So yes, there'll be 5 vehicles this budget.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
Councillor Colburn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what I'm hearing several of my fellow councillors say is, are all of these vehicles necessary this year, and can that be looked at? Can we do with 1 for example, one fewer. I think that's what we're getting at. So I'm just going to put it right out there. Is this something that we can look at again? Thank you, Steve.
Steve?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Coburn, I can re-look at this component here, and then we can kind of look at what we're looking for the 10-year forecast as well.
Thank you, Steve. Deputy Mayor Carleton?
So I guess what I'm hearing here is that a couple of these are maybe to, so instead of the guys using the big tandem single and double axle trucks to go out to a job site, they're actually going to use a pickup truck in the future. So we're looking at some cost savings there and not the wear and tear on our bigger vehicles, but we've got the added expense of smaller trucks, I guess is what I'm kind of looking at. It seems a lot. I think we all just want to be very clear on why they're all needed. And if it can be justified, then fine. But I think that's what we're looking for. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe Steve has got the message and he will bring something back to us. Councillor Sutherland, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, no, and I agree with the rest of council here. Like, I understand that, you know, we're trying to save some wear and tear, like the deputy mayor said, on the big trucks and stuff like that. But like most of these jobs that the crews are doing are road work, and we need trucks, or we need a grader or a payloader or whatever, right? It's not, you know, pickup truck's not a tool that we're going to be using other than escorting back and forth. And, you know, we've got, the trucks have more than one seat in them. I realize COVID, but, you know, there's protocols they can do to wear a mask or whatever, right? But yeah, I think, you know, I think we've got, you know, 2 1-tons, 4 half-tons. There's an SUV. I think that's plenty sufficient enough. I mean, we're looking at adding 4 more vehicles just in this slide here. So,
Steve, you're going to relook at this whole thing and bring us back more information?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got our points across to staff. So Madam Treasurer, I believe we'll move ahead.
So next we have our studies, and I would invite our Director of Operations to speak to these.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council, we have a every 2 years we do a bridge condition assessment on all our structures within the township. So anything over the 3 meter span, bridges and culverts. So it is that time of year for the inspection to begin again this fall. So this is why we brought forward this program. So it is in accordance to the MTO Ontario Structural Inspection Manual. And then also climate action, green fleet budget, looking at the fleet, looking how we can do other green initiatives within the fleet component.
Steve, this bridge conditioning assessment, that's mandatory, is it not?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. It's required every 2 years is how we've always done it here at the township level. So they go and do the visual inspection of all the bridges. They actually come back and give us a deficiency list of what needs to be looked at all of our structures, and then staff would actually prioritize them over the next few years.
Thank you. Councillor Sutherland, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I realize the bridge condition assessment study is mandatory every 2 years. I just would wonder, why don't we budget $75,000 a year as opposed to every other year, $150,000? So maybe moving forward, then we could do that.
Okay, I think he's seen heads nodding. It's a good suggestion, Councillor Sutherland. If there's no other questions on this particular slide, we'll move forward then, Madam Treasurer.
Okay.
Oh, Deputy Mayor Carleton has her hand up.
Sorry, thank you. I'd just like a little more clarity on what the climate action green fleet item is. I guess it's that fleet word. Are we adding another electric vehicle or something to the fleet? I'd just like some clarity on exactly what that is. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Carleton. When we talk about a green fleet kind of strategy, it looks at actual different costs for fuel and what types of vehicles we currently have. How can we make them more emission friendly, items like that. So it kind of looks at those kind of components. It doesn't say I'm going to add more equipment to the line, but it says, you know, if you switch to biogas, or, you know, if we look at propane or other ideas, hydrogen, stuff like that. So there's a lot of other options out there, but this will allow us to kind of give us an idea where we should be looking to move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. See no other questions, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Okay. Next up, we have our 2022 operating budget for other category. These are kind of expenses that didn't necessarily fall within another department. So we have the ITFD, as mentioned before, in their budget. It was proposing a 6.2% operating increase and no change in capital contributions. You will also see an increase in emergency planning and miscellaneous protection. This is increases to allow for health and safety initiatives, including training of staff. We had kind of previously put the actuals throughout the different departments, so we may see cost savings by having them all centralized in one in our other departments, but that amount was not measurable at this time. And then again, Cobble Beach Sewage. This is us reimbursing Cobble Beach for the revenue that we have collected, as we do not own it. It is not a cost of the township. Are there any questions?
Does council have any questions on this slide? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Next, we have our Fire Master Service Plan ask of council. I was not sure if our Director of Corporate Services or our CAO was wishing to speak to this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, I'll jump in at this point. I've had some preliminary discussions with our fire department. This is an item that's been on their list for a while. And it really is the high-level planning document that guides fire service and fire resourcing needs over a long-term horizon for the Inter-Township Fire Department. So I'll be working with the fire department on this master plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam CEO. I think it's a necessary must to our other partner in the Inter-Township Fire Department has already had a master service plan done, so I think it's right that we have one done too. Deputy Mayor Carlton, please go ahead.
I think you may have just answered my question. I guess I was looking at that and I think it's valid that we really have to have it, but is this something that we share the cost with our partner in the fire department, or is it strictly what ours needs to be for our township?
Well, I believe Meaford have already done theirs, and I believe we're doing ours on our side of the fence to keep up. Madam CEO, please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, that would be correct, and it really is a requirement for fire departments to have an overall master plan. So, so I would hope council will support this. Thank you.
Is there any other question on this particular item? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Sorry, I apologize. So next we kind of have our future capital reserve contributions. So what we mean by this is these are funds that we are proposing to use the current year tax levy to pay for the future. So these funds that we are proposing here all go directly into reserves for the future of the township. So for roads, we are proposing 300,000, bridges 100,000, fleet and equipment 200,000, parks and recreation 150,000, and IT 15,000.
Any questions of the council? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
So we've talked about a lot of money going out of the township. Now we're going to look at our operating revenues. So this is money coming in. We have received notification that we do have a slight increase in our Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant that we receive. You will see that investment income is lowered. Unfortunately, interest rates are still very low. So although we are not paying as much in interest, we are not earning as much either. When calculating the building user fees and planning user fees, we try to look at a 5-year average of actual revenue that we've incurred. So that is where those increases are coming from, given the general trends in those increases. And in the other, you will see that the 2021 actual is much higher than the 2021 budget. That is because that is where our airport proceeds have been included. For right now, we will be transferring that to reserve. It just had not been done at the time we were putting together this information.
Thank you, Madam.
Are there any questions?
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. I was just wondering, since our CEO is new to the municipality, I wonder if we could save money on the dog tags if we were to contract her to go through the municipality and collect dog tags this year, if she get a chance to walk around the municipality. Councillor Coburn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if our treasurer could explain a little bit more about the recycling grant that's one of the lines in this budget.
So this is a stewardship grant that we receive to contribute and pay for our recycling contract.
Okay, Councillor Coburn. See no other questions on this slide, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
So now that we've had a look at both our operating expenses and our operating revenue, you will see that the proposed taxes levied for operating purposes only, so when we take our operating expenses less our operating revenue, is $9,916,925. This is a operating levy increase of $1,375,375 over that of the 2021 budget. Are there any questions with this?
Seeing no questions from council, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
So now when we look to summarize our capital asks of council, all of our capital asks total $7,917,000, less what staff are proposing to be funded from reserves of $4,508,350. That includes the full $3 million for Elm Street, less what we have, less what we will be receiving for grants. This includes the Canada Community Building Fund, the former gas tax, Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, as well as various other fundings that we have received for Campbell Arena, the Kilsyth Sidewalk, and the public portal. All of our grant revenue totals $2,305,775. This leaves taxes levied for capital purposes of $1,102,875. Are there any questions?
Any questions of council? Deputy Mayor Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. I guess I'm back to that Elm Street one again. When we did the English Falls Road, there were grants available on that one. Was there any grant funding that we could have gone after for Elm Street, or is that kind of muddied by the fact that it's a boundary road and it's kind of joint ownership type thing?
So in response to that, staff have asked Grant Match, the third-party company that we would have entered into an agreement with, to look and see if there is any funding available. But yes, it may become a little muddied when it is a boundary road.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Do you see no other questions, please go ahead.
So what does this mean for our 2022 tax levy. When we look at the taxes levied for operating and the taxes levied for capital, we get a total taxes levied of $11,019,800. This would be an increase in the taxes levied of $494,446, or a 4.7% increase over that of last year. This does not mean it's a 4.7 increase over the municipal tax rate. The effect that this would have on our municipal tax rate is a 3.22% increase.
Any questions of council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please, or Treasurer, please go ahead.
So I apologize that this information that I'm about to provide is not explicitly included in the budget package. I will send out an email afterwards. At the time, I just didn't know exactly what the county was doing. So when we combine our proposed increase of the 3.22% with that of the counties being 2.88%, we have received communication. There will be no change in the education tax rate. It gives us a combined tax rate increase of 2.66%.
Questions of council? Councilor Sutherland, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Treasurer, could you just repeat that combined again? It just cut out for a quick second.
So when we combine our proposed tax levy rate increase with that of the county, we are looking at a tax rate increase of 2.66% over that of prior year.
Okay. Is there any other questions on this item? Seeing none, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
So what does this mean for our ratepayers? The 2022 average assessment of a single family dwelling, when I look just at our proposed municipal tax rate increase, it is an estimated increase of $54.05 throughout the whole year. When I combine our tax rate increase with that of the county, it would be an $84.49 annual increase over that of 2021.
Thank you. Councilor Sutherland, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious, so it's still on a $290,000 average single family home or dwelling. I feel like that number should be quite a bit higher, like $400,000 or $500,000, and then that gives more of a realistic number.
So I got our average single family dwelling right from MPACT. We do, of course, have households that are assessed lower and higher than that.
So what you're saying, Madam Treasurer, is you're taking it from the impact information.
Yes, that is correct.
Madam CEO, please go ahead.
Through Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Sutherland has identified, one of the items of conversation. It is typical practice to take the MPAC assessment rate. That's a thread throughout most municipal budgets. And that's why it's been a challenge that MPAC hasn't done their reassessment in a couple of years. So I would support the Treasurer's method of using the MPAC rate, but Councillor Sutherland is correct that I think we'll see quite a difference when MPAC does their reassessment in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Carlin, I seen your hand up.
Yes, but it was exactly what CAO Fletcher has just said. I was questioning that amount was based on a 2016 MPAC assessment rate, and that will change substantially. So we'll see that change in the future.
That's correct. And Madam Clerk, I've seen your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was essentially going to echo what CEO Fletcher had said.
Okay. Thank you for that. See no other questions on this slide, Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
So that kind of summarizes our operating and capital budget for 2022. Now I wish to transition into our water systems budget. I just want to remind everyone that water systems must be self-funded and do not in any way impact the municipal tax levy as a whole.
Okay, go ahead.
So first we have our East Linton water system budget. You will see various differences between the last approved budget and the proposed 2022 budget. That is because the last approved budget was done in 2017. For this system, you will see a budgeted surplus of $41,850. This surplus would be transferred to the East Linton Water System Reserve at year end. Are there any questions?
Does Council have any questions? Seeing none, please move ahead.
I would just ask Steve to discuss the capital projects related to the East Linton water system.
Steve, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. So the East Linton works to be proposed for replacements and items. So we have the membrane filter units replacement for inspections. So we're looking to replace an entire skid of membrane units. So we do one per year. So it's roughly about $10,000. We're looking to replace the turbidity meters. They're at the end of their useful life. Replacement of the membrane filtration systems or the unit pump. It's preventive maintenance from that pump. So that we're looking to do that. The high lift pump down by the water there. We're looking to replace that component as well. So it's more of a preventive maintenance component. We're looking to update the UV system in the water treatment plant of East Linton this year. So it's also looking at, it's a bigger chunk of the money of $150,000. It's coming to the end of its useful life. So we're looking to do that. And we're also looking at the future of what the potential of East Linton growing. So we're looking to that whole growth component. The raw wire coupling replacements, we're looking at quite a few raw wire couplings along the raw wire line that comes in. So we're looking at some items there that need to be replaced.
Thank you, Steve. Does Council have any questions? Seeing none, please go ahead.
Next up, we have our Shell Lake water system. Again, you will see various changes in the proposed budget between the last approved budget of 2017 and the 2022 budget. You will see that the 2022 budget does show a deficit of $26,500. This is only because there is a large dollar value of capital required, and this deficit would be funded from the Shell Lake Water System Reserve.
Any questions? Seeing none, please go ahead.
I would invite our Director of Operations to speak to the capital items required at the Shell Lake Water.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council. Capital Works proposed at the Shell Lake Water Treatment Plant. We're looking to replace the green sand filter media replacements. So we're looking at replacing some sand filters that are currently out there that are past their useful life. We're looking to look at the tank liner that was originally installed in 1996. So this is usually our inspection year for wear and tear and then repair as required. Gravity sand filters, we're looking to replace some of those filters as well. While we're opening them up and taking a look at, we're also going to be looking at the underdrain and the air scour system as well. If it is required to be replaced, then that will be replaced as well. If not, then we will leave as is. Ion exchange units, we're looking to do some system repairs and also media replacement along that component as well.
Thank you, Steve. Does Council have any questions? Seeing none, please go ahead.
Next, we have the budget for the Potawatomi water system. Again, this system will be operating in a deficit likely for 2022, and it's estimated by staff that it will continue to operate in a deficit until 2027.
Any questions? Seeing none, please move ahead.
Again, if our Director of Operations could speak to the capital items.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Council, the items that we're looking to repair at the Palwami water system is we're looking to replace the chlorine analyzer that is at the end of its useful life, and then also replacing the turbidity analyzer as well. So we're trying to get ahead of before it fails. So.
Thank you. Questions of Council? Seeing none, please move ahead, Madam Treasurer.
Next, we have our oxygen water system. You will see that it is budgeted to have a surplus of $138,750. These funds will be transferred to the oxygen water system reserve at year end. You will also see a transfer to South Bruce Peninsula and a corresponding South Bruce Peninsula charges revenue. This is kind of the in of the out of us collecting the funds on behalf of South Bruce Peninsula and remitting those funds to them.
Questions? Councillor Sullivan, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just, I guess South Bruce Peninsula just increased their rate that much more, or did we use that much more water? I could see it was up about 190,000, and we're budgeting for about 190,000 more. I realize we're going to get the revenue, but I'm just curious to know if we're using more or they're just billing more.
So that proposed budget increase comes from the fact that the last approved budget was done in 2017 for the water system. So we have not since then kind of caught up with what the budgets should be. So our 2022 budget does look at a 5-year actual of what we have been collecting and remitting to South Bruce Peninsula.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Did that answer your question, Councillor Sullivan?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Thank you. See no other questions, please move on, Madam Treasurer.
Next, we have our water administration budget. These funds, these are funds that we had not previously budgeted for, but we will be budgeting in 2022. As part of our year end, these funds are allocated out to each water system based on the number of connected users. Are there any questions?
Questions from Council? Seeing none, please go to your last slide, Madam Treasurer. Oh, before I go to you, maybe I'll let Madam Treasurer or CEO, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we'll turn it back to Ms. Buchanan in a minute. Mr. Mayor, I'm not entirely comfortable where we left the discussion about the administration budget. We have our follow-ups that were distinctly outlined by Council for the Elm Street project and for the fleet information, but I feel like we need to circle back, and I think you had suggested this earlier, and I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, and I might suggest that staff take the item away and we come back with follow-up on previous considerations by Council. So we'll outline that, previous direction that Council has given regarding the administration salaries and benefits. And I feel I need to suggest this for my own benefit, Mr. Mayor. I've used a lot of terminology that it's my understanding, and I think we need to put the facts on paper. So that would be my suggestion, is that is also a follow-up item, a formal follow-up item. And to Councillor Coburn's question about what constitutes administration, that we clearly define that as well. So I just wanted to put that on the table before we talk about next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO, for doing that, and I agree 100%. Councillor Coburn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for those comments, Cynthia. I guess to add to that, I would be curious to know, in regards to the COLA, does that 2% increase, is that across the board to all non-union staff? And does it need to be? If some members of staff had large bump ups last year, did those pay grade increases and market value increases, would that capture a reasonable amount of cost of living adjustment anyway? So I'm curious to know about that. I'm standing firm that council should not accept a 2.2% COLA increase when everyone else is looking at 2%. I'm not going to waver from that point. I don't know that it's a deal breaker, but I think the optics are important. And I wonder, through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, is there any appetite from my colleagues, or is it just me, who wants more verification around the value of hiring another staff person for the office in charge of communications and PR, or are those tasks that can be aligned better amongst our current staff that we have now? Is this something that we can look at for a future budget, but perhaps not this year, given the other increases we're looking at? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go to, senior staff. I'm going to go to Madam Clerk first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note that throughout this presentation, I've been making note of all of the follow-up items and have created kind of a direction motion following Samantha's termination of the presentation. So I just wanted to note that while we're kind of having this culminating conversation, that we will have a direction motion coming out of this.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the question that Councillor Coburn just addressed, that was going to be part of the follow-up as well. Coming in new, I read in the strategic plan that Council approved that there was a distinct communication position that was a want, or a need. I think we need to follow up on where those conversations have been and what has been approved. I will say that this is not a body of work that can be dispersed amongst other staff effectively. So it will impact levels of service and our ability to do media relations, some of the business and economic development aspects that would be encompassed in this position, and just a communication and customer service strategy. So should council decide to defer the position to another year, that's fair enough, but it really is not, there's a comprehensive body of work for this position, and it's not something that can be dispersed amongst existing staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam CEO, and I look forward to your report that will be coming back on this item. I guess Deputy Mayor Carlton first.
Thank you. I guess just commenting on that, we've called it communications position in the past. I'm not in favor of deferring that one. I think we've proven all along that leaving this on the side of everybody's desks for everybody to try and cover isn't working effectively. And I think there's some very real benefits that could be derived from this position that we would see going forward. So I just want to state I'm not in favor of deferring that one at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Carlton. I'm just hoping that I look forward to the CEO's report coming back, and at that time, maybe council can have a real good discussion on that particular item. Councillor Pringle, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, kind of going along with the deputy mayor there also there. I know I think we've all been part of this scenario the last 2 years here where we're getting lots of taxpayers saying you can't get a hold of anybody at the office, or, what's wrong with your phone systems, whatever. And I remember us having a discussion about whether we should be hiring somebody to do the communication piece. And I thought at that time we had decided that we did need another body. I'm again the same as the deputy mayor. I don't want to defer this. I do believe we do have an issue with communication between the public and the office, whether it be phone systems or whatever. So I am in favor of not deferring it myself.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. As I said before, I'm hoping we can have this discussion when the CAO's report comes back on this particular item. Councillor Colburn, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and sorry not to belabor the point, but I know that that position is in our strategic plan. I don't know that it was ever officially approved by council. We have all kinds of things in our strategic plan that this is a generalized kind of goal-oriented roadmap. It certainly isn't, in my opinion, not a proper procedure for approving hiring new staff. Just my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. As I said before, I'm not going to make any comment on that particular item right now. I look forward to the CAO's report coming back with more information, sort of update information, and then we'll have an open discussion at that time. So there's no other questions on that. I'm going to turn it back over to Madam Treasurer to finish up your presentation.
Yes, so now that we've summarized kind of our 2022 operating and capital budget, staff in March will be looking at presenting a report to council with these changes that have been directed. And then in April, we will be looking to hopefully pass our bylaw for the approval of the 2022 budget, as well as the bylaw for the sums required, which is the municipal tax rate bylaw. I just want to say thank you, everyone, for your time this morning, and look forward to our next steps related to budget.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. It was an excellent presentation today, and kudos to you and your staff. You've done an excellent job. Madam Clerk, before I go to you, I guess I'm asking, I realize you have a motion prepared which will pass at this time, or put it on the floor, is that what you're saying? Okay, so would you please read your motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, in taking notes of the further direction and further information that council is wanting out of this budget discussion here today, I've assembled the following direction motion, and bear with me, it is a little bit on the longer side given the amount of conversation we've had today. So the motion I have prepared reads as follows: that staff are hereby directed to present an addendum report regarding the following: defining a comprehensive plan for township facilities, review of the included 2.2% COLA increase as it applies to council, review of pay grid adjustments approved in 2021, specifically movement from the 50th to 60th percentile, the impact of implementing a communication specialist position, the impact and benefit of implementing a communication specialist position, review and update of fees relating to garbage bag tags, alternative funding methods for the Elm Street reconstruction project, and a review of the proposed equipment and fleet purchases. Is there any clarifications or amendments anyone would like to make to that motion?
Madam Clerk, I wonder, is there any way we could put in that motion, or maybe the Director of Operation could take it as direction? I'd like to have a sort of an idea of the fleet he has in operations right now, like how many trucks and so on. There seemed to be quite a mass confusion over the way it was presented to us, how many he had and so on. I'm just curious if we could get more information, come back on that. Madam CEO, please go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think that would be our intent, is to outline the equipment that's currently in the fleet, the things that are replacement vehicles or equipment, and the items that are new and additional to the fleet and equipment complement and the rationale for those additional pieces of equipment. That would be the intent of that portion of the report.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that's very clear. It just, the way it sounded, we hired more men and we seem to be getting them all in the brand new truck, but didn't want that impressive to be out there, that's all I was saying. Thank you very much for making that, putting that motion on the floor for us, Madam Clerk. Would someone move that, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Thompson. Is there any other discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. And Councillor Barfoot, are you still there? I believe the motion was carried. Okay, yes, it was. Thank you. Well, it's great to have this done. I'm going to read the confirming bylaw. The bylaw 2022-14 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of February 22nd, 2022 be read a first, second, third time, finally passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed the corporation, and endorsed in the bylaw book. Someone to move, put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Sullivan, second by Councillor Colburn. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor? The motion is carried. Our next meeting will be March the 9th at 5 o'clock. If we have no other business here today, I'll ask for a motion of adjournment. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Councillor Barfoot. There's no discussion on the motion before us. All in favor of adjournment? The motion is carried. Thank you, everybody.